Hello and welcome to episode 75 of the award-winning combat sports podcast, The Boxing Show, with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. As always, I'd like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I am joined this week by none other than Mr. Andy Clarke and the former WBO cruiserweight champion of the world. He still hates when I say former, Chris Billam-Smith, as we review Oleksandr Usyk versus Tyson Fury this past weekend. But before that, how are we doing, guys? We all excited for Christmas?
Yeah. Genuinely, really am, yeah.
You look excited, but also look a little bit tired, Andy.
I'm a bit tired, yeah. I'm a bit tired, but good tired. You know, it was a good week last week. Really enjoyed it. Back this morning, kind of 5 o'clock in the morning. My little daughter just kind of crawling into bed and just repeatedly punching me around the face. If I'm honest, I had a really odd dream. I had a really sort of strange dream that I woke up from where. At one point last week, I was sat next to Roberto Duran. He was waiting to do an interview. And in my dream last night, there was that scene, but then bit by bit, he just kept getting closer and closer to me. And then in the end, put his forehead on my forehead. And then I woke up, but that's where little CK was, just had her forehead right on mine. It was like slapping me around the face. So it's quite a strange thing to wake up to be honest.
It's just like Chris says, like, you got to stop reading her the knockout before bed every night. Yeah. How about yourself, Chris? How you getting on?
Yeah, all good. Been enjoying some good family time myself with little man. Although he had me up at 2 o'clock this morning, and then I couldn't get back to sleep till 6, and then I'm up at 7. So.
And I've probably got like 3 tired dads.
But,
all excited for Christmas,
good.
though.
I am excited for Christmas because he's 2.5 now, so it's
so you get a bit out of him.
Yeah, I'm going to build him the sickest racetrack basically on Christmas Eve. So he wakes up to his, because if he opens a box, it's like then I've got to build it like on Christmas Day. He wants to play it straight away. So Christmas Eve, no, just like a track where
that's probably not what they do nowadays. Scale
no, yeah,
I reckon people would still be into that. Scale Electrics was great.
But just like a track where, like, because he's got hundreds of cars and you just put them on the top and they're just like, he'll follow them down. Because at the moment he just sits in the kitchen and just goes whoosh and chucks them and like all the skirting boards chipped. Hopefully the people buying a house aren't watching this.
Yeah, don't worry. Kids are really well behaved around Christmas, especially all of that chocolate and all of the excitement of presents definitely keeps them very, very calm. But yeah, we're kind of, as I said to you this morning, we're like the 3 wise men. We've had one come from Riyadh, one from Bournemouth, and one from Bedford. So I had to get replacement bus service today, which to me that is very much like a pilgrimage. Not quite like Andy's, but I'm going to say sort of on a similar level, at least to Chris's.
No, the replacement bus is going to test a person's commitment levels, isn't it?
On a Monday morning as well.
You've got to want it.
You really got to
get
want
on a replacement bus.
Yeah. But anyway, without further ado, we do have a lot to get through. So let's start with this past weekend. Going to go to Andy, as you were the man on site in Riyadh for Oleksandr Usyk's repeat victory, a unanimous decision win over Tyson Fury to retain his WBA, WBC and WBO heavyweight titles. Another great performance from Oleksandr Usyk, another great fight, and still.
Yeah, and still, he's some man, isn't he? He really is. I really enjoyed the whole week. We had a different kind of vibe and dynamic from Fury, which was good and kind of to be expected, I think, because it's the first time we'd seen him off the back of a defeat. He was kind of brooding. You could tell that it had really hurt him, despite the fact that he claimed that it hadn't. I didn't believe a word of that. He didn't say a lot, and it was good. It was good. It was good to see Usyk kind of. I wouldn't say he came out of his shell, because it's not like he's ever lacked confidence. But having won undisputed, he really did play that circus master role, kind of statesman-like almost at times. The different outfits, the arrivals to every major engagement were really impressive, particularly the open workouts with his man who climbed halfway up the lighting rig. He was great. And then the choir at the press conference, all of that stuff was really, really good. And we had the long stare off and all that kind of thing. So, and a row about beards and stuff like that. You know, I love all of that. So it was a really good build up. And on the night, again, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good fight. It wasn't as dramatic as the first one. We didn't have those big kind of moments like the 9th round in the first fight, but I thought it was a really good fight, a close fight, and the right person got it. I think the right person got it, like the first one. With a couple of rounds to go, we were listening to the corner sound, which you can always hear better at home than we can at ringside, but Sugar Hill seemed to be saying to Fury, if you do what you did for most of that previous round, the 10th, which I did think he won, we can bring this home. And at that point, I thought that seems like fair comment to me. If you can win these last 2 rounds, if Fury can win these last 2 rounds, then that could well be enough to get him over the line, because I thought at that point Usyk was, ahead. He got his nose in front. But then Usyk came out and won the 11th, and that's the glory of the man, really. Winning 2 rounds in a row against him is hard, let alone 3. It's really, really difficult to do. He's amazing at kind of just snuffing out the momentum. So, yeah, another really good performance by him, but also from Fury. The cards are 116, 112. That's a legit score. I could see how you would get that. You give the majority of the close rounds to Usyk, but that's fine. That's how you get that. I was probably a bit surprised we had 3 116, 112s. I wouldn't have been surprised by 116, 112, a 115, 113 and a draw, maybe. But it was good. It was good again. And of course Tyson thought he won. People slating him as being deluded because he thought he won. It's totally fine for Tyson Fury to think that he won that fight. He's put a massive shift in 2 fights now at the absolutely highest level, and he's come away with 2 losses. And that's really, really hard to take.
Chris, it seems like inevitably after big fights, it was the same to a degree in the first fight, but certainly this past weekend. It seems kind of varying scorecards. The general feeling, I think, the general consensus is the right man got it on the night. What did you make of Oleksandr Usyk's performance against Tyson Fury?
Yeah, he's so good, isn't he? Just in terms of his consistency, he was by far the more consistent through the fight, up on his toes, and then just managing to. He was able to get shot combos off and stuff. I actually watched it back again yesterday. I mean, on the night I didn't score it, but finished watching it yesterday and today. And there's a few close rounds, but I can have it really wide to Usyk as well, like a 9-3, because if you score a lot of the rounds, like the close ones, all to Usyk, then you could do that. But I can't see how Fury won more than 5 rounds, to be honest with you. Really good performance. What Andy was saying there about the corner work. I wrote some notes down, and like end of the 10th round, Sugar telling Fury like it's all you from here and stuff like that. But you could just see in Fury's face like he didn't believe it himself, and I think that was because of the body shots. The left hand to the body from Usyk was amazing. The jab as well, but just that straight left hand was reminded me of like Opetai's against Jack Massey. He just kept taking a bit out of him, chipping away, and I think that really took its toll on Fury. But he was always in the fight. But yeah, the end of that 10th round, he's telling him it's all you from here, and keep grinding him down and stuff like that. But you could just see in Fury's face, he was like, I haven't got that gear in me. I can't get into the gear you need me to get into, I think. And he still gave it a good go. And the last round was a great round, like great back and forth, just both of them going at it. Both worked the body really well. I thought Fury actually, first shot he landed like 10 seconds in was a body shot, just cuffed him. You could see Usyk just go out. Like that's a lot of weight going through that shot. And he hit him clean with that. And I think both of their sort of game plans were work the body, obviously with a lot more variety throughout, but a really, really good performance and a really good fight.
It was similar to I felt like the first fight where there was those first 3 or 4 rounds where it was kind of nip and tuck a little bit. I think you could see those rounds probably a variety of different ways before Fury, again in sort of 4 and 5, looked to hit his straps, in particular in the 5th round, Andy. He started to look as he did in that first fight in 4, 5, 6 and most of the 7th in the first fight. Fury just settling into his rhythm, and then you kind of get that impression that, this is kind of deja vu again.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was. I thought he started well in the first round. You could have gone either way with it, but just the way he kind of went about it, he was more on the front foot, and he wasn't gung-ho or reckless, because of course you can't be that. If you just stand in the middle of the ring and start swinging against someone like Usyk, you will get slaughtered. And it's kind of hilarious to me sometimes how people will lay out a blueprint for beating someone who hasn't been beaten, like they used to do with Mayweather, and it's like you could get on top of him and rough him up, fine, but you've got to be really careful how you do it. And I thought the early signs from him there were pretty good. And then the fifth was a big round for Fury. But I remember saying at the time, this next round now is going to be really interesting because Usyk is amazing at snuffing out momentum. He sniffs it and he steps on it. And he did it. He won that sixth round. And then it's the same thing again. The seventh now is a big round for Fury because what's he going to do? Because Usyk can then build some momentum, which he did. I thought it may well have been level at halfway. I didn't keep a card myself, but Shane and Matt did. Shane had it 3-3 at halfway. I think Matt had Usyk by a point, courtesy of a drawn round in there. And then he just opened up some clear daylight, I think, in like kind of 7 and 8. Because that's just what he does, isn't it? It's just so difficult to stay with him because at no point does he ever back off you. Never in his boxing life has he thought to himself, all right, looks like it's going to be the distance. I'll just tuck up, maybe take a round off. Could maybe still win the round, but I'll take a round off here. Never, ever, ever. He's just on you all the time. And I was talking to Shane about this at the airport yesterday. It's always really easy to look at what someone's done when they've had a good round. And when Fury was on the front foot and kind of shortening up that right hand and really imposing himself, he was doing the business. But if all you can offer is, well, why doesn't he just do that for every second of every round and then he'd win? It's not that simple, is it? It's not that simple. I mean, you must, participants must get so bored of that kind of thing. It's just, well, when you find something that works, just do that all the time. Why don't you just do that all the time? He would have been trying, but you got someone in there who's just not going to let you do it. And another thing that worked really well for Usyk was just that little crouch, jab to the body, and then bang, left hand kind of up there on that sort of angle. And every time Fury pulled onto the back foot and kind of went to tuck up, it was a mistake because Usyk would slide in and be on you all of the time. And that left hand would travel further than you think, and he'd land it.
And he could tell, like, by doing that, when Fury's in that position, he's not able to throw anything meaningful back. So then he just goes boom, 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 and puts that second phase on and just keeps consistent. But yeah, that fifth round was Fury's best round. Like and then the sixth round, not much happened. Usyk landed like a decent straight left hand, but in fact, to be fair, 6 and 7, I don't think much happened. There wasn't like much in the rounds, but you probably give them to Usyk.
Just those eye-catching shots, wasn't it? I felt like in the sixth round there was, because in the first fight, I mean, the ninth round, obviously for very good reason, was the one that got the headlines, but there was a shot, I think it was the end of the seventh round, or at the start of the where the nose went to Fury, and I felt like something similar happened in the sixth round on Saturday night. I felt that straight left hand just landed
right at the end of
on the end of the nose, and you can just see Fury immediately go and pour into the nose. Similar to the first fight, there wasn't the swelling underneath as there was in the first time
like
around.
that right at the end of a round, sometimes you can almost half not notice it because, you know, if you're watching at home and the bell's about to go, but Shane said to me immediately, he felt that. He kind of half buzzed in there with that shot right at the end of the round, and he does punch right up to the end of the round, and that's, you know, that can be massive. Because I remember watching the fight against Bellew, and I didn't pick up on it at the time, but talking to Bellew about it for your number one Christmas gift.
There we go. Right
at the end of I think it was either the 6th or the 7th, he hit him with a left hand when Bellew had almost down tools because the bell was about to go, and at that point the fight was over, and it was just a matter of time. So he punches right up until the final bell, and that's him, isn't it? Every second of every round he is on you and dangerous.
He is, but again, a measure of I mean, I tweeted something similar the day after. I think this is the highest level heavyweight fights, both the first and second of this generation. Both been really, really good fights, and part of the reason for that has been the ebb and flow for it. I felt like Fury, Usyk had a good 6, 7 and 8, but then before kind of, I remember thinking at the time, you know, if Usyk's level there, I mean, obviously he's won every fight, so it kind of pales into his significance. But if he's with you at the halfway stage, the second half of the fight is always going to be his fight, which to me made Fury's kind of mini revival in 9 and 10 all the more impressive, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, I scored those, like, they were close rounds, like really close rounds. But Fury was in the fight the whole time, and from the off, you could see the levels of concentration and focus. Like, they were both very on it, which is obviously you expect, but sometimes it doesn't happen, especially off the back of a loss. Fury could easily have gone away, and you never know how someone's going to respond in training camp. And like, oh well, I'm getting paid well for the rematch, and you never know. But yeah, proud man, and obviously putting a great shift in training camp, great shift on the night, very focused, and then all the way up, like you said, to the back end of the fight was still trying to win. I feel like sometimes, like we spoke about earlier with the corner stuff from Shukit, I feel like you can't just tell someone to grind it out. Fury's a great fighter, but you're tired, you're dog tired in there, and you got someone just saying, just do more, just grind it out. It's like, well, what do you mean? A little bit of tactics or technical stuff would help, because it's not like football managers go, yeah, just put more effort in. It's always like there's always tactics involved. Do you know what I mean? Or when he does this, do this because he's doing this more in this fight, or whatever it may be. And there didn't really seem to be much of that going into the last 2 rounds. And you could see Fury, like I said, Fury was tired. So sometimes it's just trying to get someone to, I think as a coach, trying to get that technical point across as well. But Fury was really, really good in the whole fight. And like I said, that last round was a great round, and one you could watch over and over again. So highly technical, but big shots going in, both tough men, probably getting hurt with some of the shots and just firing back. So, but yeah, Fury was solid.
Andy, I know and appreciate it's difficult for you when you're watching the fight live. What was your kind of immediate feeling as the bell went? Because as I mentioned before, there's some people who are, I think it's kind of a very small minority who are crying robbery, but there's probably a slightly bigger minority who think Fury won or it was a draw. What was kind of the feeling at the final bell from your position?
It's always a really interesting one, and it's one of the sort of like biggest challenges of doing a really big fight where there's a lot of eyeballs on it, and you know as you're going through it that it's close, that there are close rounds, or at least it could be close, and you're probably not going to get a stoppage to kind of save us from all of the debate. So there's lots of things kind of swirling through your head, and I never look for the opinion of anyone other than the people I'm working with. I don't look at, we had TNT right next to us, I don't look as to how they've got it. We've got TalkSport 5 Live behind us. I'm not turning around to ask them, how have you got it? I trust myself, and I trust Matt, and it was Shane on the night, and I trust him too, and that's all you can do. And going through it, I was glancing at Shane's card and Matt's card every now and again, and they both had 7-5 Usyk. I think they got it slightly different ways, or Matt might have had 116, 113, or 115, 114. I can't quite remember, but they both had Usyk anyway. And my feeling was that very little in it at halfway, could have been level, but if anyone was winning at halfway, it was probably Usyk. And it's what Chris has been saying basically all the way through. Fury was absolutely in it, but I don't think at any point he was ahead. I don't think at any point you could say that he was winning, but he was always within striking distance. And just as Usyk pulled away, he kind of came back into it again. And at the final bell, I thought to myself, I think Usyk has done enough here, but it's close enough that it would be a mistake for me to say categorically I feel that Usyk has won, because then if he doesn't get it, I've already illegitimised Fury's win. So it's a difficult balance you have to strike. And it'll sound like you're kind of copping out and hedging your bets a little bit too much, but you just have to make that judgment as to whether you feel like you've got a clear enough winner that it would be bad if the other person got it. And I remember waiting for the scores in the first fight and thinking to myself, I'm pretty clear in my own mind that Usyk is a clear enough winner in a really good close fight, but not a fight that was that hard to score. So I was relieved that when we had the split decision that Usyk got it, because I was going to have to say if Fury got it, I'd made up my mind as they were reading out the scores, okay, split decision, if Fury gets it, you congratulate him, but then I would have to say that I felt it was controversial. And this was more difficult to score than that in a sense, because there were a lot more rounds that were closer. But when the scores were read out and you've got 3 8-4s, I couldn't see how that wasn't going to go Usyk's way. And if it had gone Fury's way at 3 116, 112s, again in the moment, I'm just saying to myself, right, if Fury's got this 3 times 8 fours, I'm going to have to say that that's not right. So when Usyk got announced, you think, okay, yeah, I think the right person's got this.
Yeah,
but you think there are all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think I
as you're
texted
going
you
through
after
it.
the fight, didn't I? Saying it felt like I think I said, how have you got it? I feel like I wasn't scoring it, but it feels like kind of an 8-4.
Yeah, I had it around closer than the judges at 7-5. I don't know whether or not. I rewatched the fight and didn't. After being told by Andy it's a waste of time to go back and rescore fights, I didn't rescore it. But I did go back.
If you watch it the second time exactly the same way you watched it the first, so you've watched it both times on TV, then you can.
My favourite thing is when people
if you
like,
watch it at ringside and then watch it on TV, you're not seeing what you saw.
Yeah,
that's really interesting because obviously Lee Cutler's fight the other week, we were sat ringside watching it, and I'm really harsh, obviously, because I'm like, if it's close, you're giving it to the other guy. And then I watched it back on TV, and I thought he won so much wider on TV, and everyone was on TV was saying how is it so close? How is it this? How is it won a draw and stuff? How have they even got it like that close? It doesn't make sense. No, how can you score 6 rounds to McKenna with the 2 knockdowns? Blah, blah. And I was like, and then I watched it back, and I understood those people.
Yeah.
But ringside, I was like, that's close. Like, he's got to have won 5 rounds to get the decision.
We've had a few, haven't we, recently? Like where like Beterbiev Bivol was probably the highest profile one, where people was kind of it was ringside versus TV, and
that's
people
it. And that's a good example because I was at the end of that, I was clear enough in my own mind again that I thought Bivol did enough, and I said it, and then he didn't get it. And so even when we had the 3
Ramzan Kadyrov was looking at you going, you said what, mate?
I was ringside for that. and at ringside, that was kind of the consensus. But so when the 116, 112s came out, I thought to myself, must be Usyk. But then I thought, hang on a second, because with Beterbiev Bivol, there was 116, 112, not 3, but there was 1. And that made me think, well, Bivol must have got it, because there's no way that Beterbiev's won that 8-4. But he did.
We were in the studio that night, and we all had Beterbiev winning. So it does make a difference.
It does make a difference. It does make a difference.
Yeah, I didn't go back and rescore it, but I did rewatch it, and there was enough close rounds in there that I feel like, kind of what you've said, I feel like I probably maybe edged towards Fury on some of the closer rounds, and it shouldn't matter, but I don't know. At the sound of the bell, I had it 115, 113 for Usyk. But again, acknowledging a few close rounds and acknowledging that quite literally everybody apart from Andy Clarke was saying that they wanted Tyson Fury to win in the build-up, and Oleksandr Usyk's team. It did make me think, because there was enough close rounds. Fury wasn't dropped in this fight like he was in the last fight. There wasn't, and all of those things, you can shake it up and make a quite unsavory potion if that's the way. And that's kind of how I saw it. I thought 115, 113, but I've give a couple of close-ish rounds to Usyk. If you go those the other way, then you're in draw or controversial split territory. But once I heard unanimous decision, I was very similar to you in the sense that it can only be one way.
With someone like Usyk as well, like I on the night, I was like Chris. I did kind of impression scoring because I didn't score it round by round. But when you got someone who's as consistently busy as him and just as consistent as him, at the end of the fight, you look at it, your impression scoring is probably quite accurate, because I came away from it thinking Usyk's outworked Fury, really, over those 12 rounds. He's definitely thrown more and therefore probably landed more. I'm not really into punch stats, but I did see some punch stats and they bore that out. And given that no one really badly hurt the other, that's actually a pretty good snapshot of the fight, isn't it, really, as to what happened. And therefore, Usyk winning the fight was just kind of... That's what it looked like.
Yeah, and he also landed the cleaner shots as well. I think the best shot of the fight was that left hand that we spoke about in the 6th round. And then even late on in the fight, you mentioned kind of the flurry with Fury up against the ropes. He kind of works his way up from the body upwards. I think that was in the 10th or the 11th round. So those eye-catching moments, those standout moments, were from Oleksandr Usyk. Just moving on, I guess, still within the fight. But Chris, coming to you, obviously you are a cruiserweight, a world-class cruiserweight. Fancy fighting somebody 55 pounds heavier than you? I mean, what an unbelievable achievement that is for Oleksandr Usyk. Not once, but twice.
Yeah. And like a giant of a man, isn't he, Fury? Phenomenal to do that. And I think you just... that when you put it into that sort of perspective in terms of like he's 55 pounds heavier, like that's ridiculous. So essentially that'd be me boxing someone around
welterweight.
Yeah, well, yeah, going down, yeah,
Yeah.
Wow.
Take something from welterweight up to you would be like.
I think me against Terence Crawford would be quite the size difference, but he is also a very skillful southpaw. But no, it's it's crazy. People always asking me like, "Oh, would you ever go up to heavyweight and stuff like that?" And I'm like, I can't ever see myself doing it. Usyk's he's a bigger man than me anyway. He's about an inch taller, but he's naturally a bit thicker set. And I make cruiserweight comfortable enough. So no, but and then you look at the giants that are in heavyweight, and you're like, no, I don't really fancy that.
I mean, you've been in the gym. I mean, Daniel Dubois, obviously, is a former opponent of Oleksandr Usyk. I know you sparred with Daniel at times when he was under McGuigan's gym banner. After 3 or 4 rounds, what's it like when you're in there with a guy who's 20, 30 pounds heavier than you? You can really feel it, and obviously even more so when you're boxing an even bigger giant in Tyson Fury.
Yeah, I mean, I've done sparring with like Johnny Fisher, George Fox, Don Charlesong, and although they're not necessarily at the same level and experience level as I am at heavyweight, they're still big blokes, and you're very, very tired in there. But the fact that he just comes out every round, a lot of the rounds he started really quick, just like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, he
just
came out,
4
didn't he?
punches, rather than just fencing off, and it's like wow. And you can miss those attacks because they're first 5 seconds of the round sometimes. But from Usyk's point, it's not about the judges; it's about stamping his authority and setting Fury on the back foot as soon as possible. But yeah, like Fury wasn't necessarily lean on him loads, but it's hard to with Usyk because of his feet, and he's always moving in and out of range, and always does those little side dips, either side, and those little angles, and so it's hard to lean on him. But still, having a man in there that's that big is draining.
It's brilliant as well. It just kind of he's so strong, and so like a lot of the Eastern Bloc fighters have that. I remember when Sergei Kovalev used to do sambo, didn't he? And he used to I mean, he didn't really help in the Andre Ward fight, but anyway, he's kind of on the inside. He was never very physically strong, but knew where to position his body and knew where to keep himself safe. But he's doing it against guys who are the same size as him. To do it against 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", whatever, it is unbelievable. And to be able to sustain it for 12 rounds and still get your own shots off and still win the fight.
It's just the consistency of everything that he does.
Like how this is now the consistency podcast. Now we've got CBS. There we go.
Trademark.
But I mean, it's a bit of a contradiction, but it's the consistency of the variety as well, because he just at no point during the 2 fights has he given Fury any encouragement for Fury to feel like he might be wilting, and it's at that point that a fighter's eyes will really light up. If in the clinch he does manage to get on top of him and he feels like he's wilting, then that just gives you such a massive amount of encouragement, I'm sure. But he never gives you that. He just never gives you that. And so mentally, you know that everything is going to be so hard earned, and that's hard. That is a difficult way to go about your business. And just the way that he's trained for 22 years since he took up boxing has been, again, incredibly consistent. And I was lucky enough to sit down with him for about half an hour, actually, earlier in the week. And it's for a podcast that's going to go out after the event. So we were told, don't talk about the fight, which I think was good because he's probably kind of sick of talking about the fight. So I just went for the old kind of tap-in of asking him about his early days because I'd never really heard too much about it. And he was great. But he was describing the kind of training regime when you're on the Ukrainian squad. Jesus Christ, like it's serious stuff, and you're doing that for years and years and years, and you just take it with you into the pros, and like him, you never get out of shape. You're disciplined in what you do, and it doesn't even really feel like some big kind of imposition or sacrifice because it's what you've always done and it's what you want to do. You wouldn't enjoy eating a load of trash because you'd be thinking, well, you know what I mean. You'd be
it's Christmas, mate.
The odd bit every now and again because you'd be thinking
in camp or cut.
Yeah, you'd be thinking. You'd be thinking. It'd make you feel too guilty.
Wouldn't even have a bacon sandwich this morning.
Yeah, it'd make you feel too guilty. So he. I think he's got plenty left in him, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd love it if he rode off into the sunset and retired because what is there left to do? But if he's still enjoying it, then this, why? You know, if he's still enjoying it, keep doing it.
Well, we were going to come on to that, but let's talk about that now. Obviously, invariably, Daniel Dubois quite literally didn't let him get his belts before he decided what was potentially going to come next. Shout out Daniel Dubois and whoever writes the scripts. What's next for Oleksandr Usyk? He's done everything there is to do. He's completed boxing. Do you want to see him continue, Chris? Is there anyone else that you'd like to see him in with?
That's what you got to ask.
Can he do it at the Bic? Yeah. Can he get down to Bournemouth for the £205 catch rate?
I'd very happily see him retire. Yeah. Happily, in terms of like what he's achieved. Like, it sounds awful, but you would hate him to like go in with Daniel and lose, like, because you lose that kind of that shine to it, even though everything he's done, and he could lose to Daniel or anyone. Someone like, I think realistically in heavyweight, I think the people who give him the biggest problems would be like a potentially a Bohachuk, because just how big he is. But I think he'd be maybe too consistent. But Bohachuk punches loose, kind of like Fury does, but probably puts his shots together a bit better. But maybe the feet are too slow. Daniel's obviously confidence is sky high since he last boxed Usyk. He's performed really well, and overcome a few things since his loss to Joe Joyce and stuff like that as well. But yeah, it's I'd happily see him if he announced that he was retiring, in the ring the other night. And Daniel didn't get in the ring, I think people would have been really happy. But then you almost don't want him to retire, because it's like, oh, he's ducking Daniel. Right? It's like, obviously he's not, because he's beat him and stopped him. But yeah, it's a hard, because you don't want him to go out on a bad performance, and this is the very, very top of the game that he's at now. So you'd like to see him go out, but you don't want Usyk to leave the sport, because we love watching him. So yeah, be interesting to know what's next. He obviously mentioned Daniel Dubois, I think, in the fight. I think post-fight, because Daniel basically forced him to. But yeah,
were you surprised by that? Obviously, you spent quite a lot of time around Daniel in the gym. Have you been surprised by kind of, I don't know, his blossoming, if you can call it that, in the last few months?
Not really, because I know what it's like when you gain that confidence of overcoming stuff. In whether, for me, like beating Lawrence was probably that biggest moment. The Isaac fight was there's a lot of changes through my career and confidence you take from a lot of fights, but the Isaac fight and the Lawrence fight were big steps up for different reasons, but in terms of confidence and how you feel within your own skin. And coming off the back of beating AJ at Wembley, doesn't matter who you are, you're gonna feel pretty good about yourself, and no matter what you've achieved previous to that and stuff. So his confidence will be sky high, and it shows at the moment. He believes in what he's saying. He believes he can, whether he's been told to say it or not, because sometimes people, obviously, he gets pushed in. You look at him in the past, and maybe he said things he doesn't really believe in press conference stuff, but now he believes everything he's saying, and he believes he's the best heavyweight in the world.
An absolute handful as well. Obviously, Daniel was what we've seen against Anthony Joshua, and again earlier on this year against Filip Hrgović. Is that the fight, if we do see Oleksandr Usyk continue, is that the fight that you expect? Obviously, Daniel Dubois still got to get past Joseph Parker. Yep. By all means, no foregone conclusion there. But it's difficult to see after really clearing out the division. I guess the only big name that he hasn't boxed throughout this generation is Deontay Wilder. How much of a demand is there for that after Parker and Zhilei Zhang both beat Deontay Wilder? It kind of feels like he's run out of dance partners, and he's now going around and dancing with them again. I just don't know, Andy, how that sits.
Yeah, I think that pretty much is it, really. He's the IBF champion, Dubois. Of course, we know that happened because the IBF took their belt out of the second fight. But he's a man on the rise, and he's definitely better than he was the first time Usyk boxed him. So I think there would be interest in it if he beats Parker. Zhang, I think there would be interest in that if Zhang gets past his next fight, because again he's a man, although he got beaten by Parker, he did what he did against Wilder. He's an interesting character. He's this huge kind of looming presence, and I think those two as a matchup, do you think of the kind of trailer they could do with that? Not that it's the most important thing in the world, but it would be pretty entertaining, wouldn't it?
It's become it though, hasn't it? Become
a little bit, yeah.
Fun. It's part of the fun.
We've run out of finding kind of opponents for Usyk, so we're now going on who makes the best trailer.
But if he wins his next fight, then he's a candidate. But Usyk's like, I think his boxing completion is probably the most comprehensive boxing completion of all time, isn't it? Because you look at amateur and pro, world amateur champion, Olympic champion, undefeated as a pro, two weight undisputed champion.
Did he not?
No, Lomachenko won too.
Yeah, 2012.
Usyk just won.
Oh, he didn't go.
He won the Europeans, the Worlds, the Olympics.
Yeah, he's got the set.
Undisputed cruiserweight, undisputed heavyweight, and that's it. Like, even in the build up to the fight, and I know we part of the whole, seduction of the sport is that you get brought into it all week. Oh, Fury's doing this. Oh, it's this 100. When you break it down to brass tacks, he is a man who has showed up, and that's why we love to talk about this, don't we, Andy? When people poo-poo the amateurs, we love to talk about the fact that, look, you have to show up and you have to be ready to box whoever is there. You have to he's making weight at this time. You have to be on the weight. You have to be ready. No injuries. If you've got injury, you got to fight. Gold medal in the Europeans, gold medal in the Worlds, gold medal in the Olympics. That is as good of a form guide as anything going into the pro game.
He lost his first amateur fight, he told me.
He did, yeah. I saw that being discussed this week. It's not quite as bad. I think Luke Campbell lost 6 of his first 8, I think, which was a remarkable
8 or 9.
Yeah, so a remarkable turnaround. Another Olympic gold medalist, of course. But it is that form guide, isn't it? And when you look back over the whole boxing completion, as you've kind of dubbed it there, which I think is really fitting. You can't really do it any better. And what can he do now to really add to it? I know he's talked about going down to cruiserweight. Like, is there going to be the demand for that? I think if he's going to go
now, there wouldn't, unless there's an undisputed champion. I can't see.
That's it. And is he going to hang around for, let's say, Opetai's boxing David Nika? Interesting fight, but anyway. And then after that, you've still got Zerdo floating around the picture. The WBC situation at the minute, we don't have time for probably a different podcast for that. The belts flying here, there, and everywhere. So you're probably looking at like a year for him to do that. That's another year of him. He's a year.
I don't think there's anything he can do that can add to what he's already done. It's just a question of does he still want to do it?
Is it going to penetrate as well? If I'm not to say that. Sorry, Andy, I'm not to say that he really cares about what people think. But if he goes from heavyweight to go down to cruiserweight again, is that going to be?
That's the only thing that
that no one's done.
But no one's done what he's done, right? As in undisputed at.
Well, Holyfield was, but obviously Holyfield had been beaten. Got beat before, sort of.
And the only fight genuinely I'd be proper interested in at heavyweight, which is just because we're really searching for it, would be Moses, because he's just exciting, isn't he, Moses? And he wants a world title. It sounds ridiculous, but it sounds ridiculous because of the situation, but Moses is slightly bigger than him and stuff, which, but yeah, you wouldn't, as a manager, necessarily want to do it if you're looking to keep his O and build him and get the right experience and do it properly. But if you're just thinking, what can Usyk do next? It's like, well, you got this kid. Obviously, there's going to be motivation for that. Obviously, there always would be with Usyk, but this kid's meant to be the next Usyk, essentially, the next, king of the heavyweight division. Imagine if that happened. It'd be crazy. And after the other night, I'm sure, he'd fancy his chances.
We'll come on to Moses shortly. Yeah, the opponents that you mentioned there, Martin Bakole. Listen, people may not like Billy Nelson, but that guy can really fight, man, and nobody wants to fight him. And people can say whatever they want. I've heard it from various important horses' mouth. They don't want to fight Martin Bakole.
With Usyk, it's just down to, does he want to keep doing it? And like I said, if he enjoys it still, this is his life. This is what he knows. And if he still feels like he's got it in the tank, and he still, as much as you ever can, enjoys training camp and that crew around him, and you see how tight they are and how they've been on the journey together and all that kind of thing, and maybe there are other things that he would like to do. Maybe he'd like to go and fight someone like Zhang in China. Maybe there are things you can still do. So if the desire is still there to do it, then I feel like he'll keep doing it. If he gets to the point where he just thinks, just that one morning where you wake up and you don't have the enthusiasm for the training, and you feel like it's probably time to go. But if he's still up for it, then
yeah, he'll find that out going back into the next training camp after spending a few months with his kids and his family, whether he misses them more than he has before and stuff like that, and he thinks weighing up that and that, family life, camp life and stuff like that, not seeing them for a long period of time, like it takes its toll on. And he seems like a family man, his son's got shout outs in the post-fight interview. They were the first people mentioned, which is amazing, and it shows sort of the measure of who he is as a person as well.
I remember the first fight, his daughter was born during camp for the first fight. He missed the birth. So when the fight was delayed, we went over to Spain to the camp, I think a couple of days after the fight had been delayed, and he flew back to Ukraine, or flew back to where his family was staying, and saw his daughter for like one day and then came back. And I mean, part of the beauty of his career is also part of the curse for him on a personal level. It's all been away from home. Everything. He's always been travelling.
That's what people don't realise, isn't it? Like, he's just... I don't think he boxed in...
Yeah, I think his last fight in Ukraine was 8 years ago, I think.
Yeah, like during the WBSS, he was going from...
Yeah.
He was going to Riga to beat Bridis, going to Russia to beat Gasayev, like crazy, like proper road warrior, and just at the highest level.
Also, these last few years as well, I remember speaking to his promoter, Alex Krasik, about it, these last few years have been very political for him as well, in a boxing sense.
Yeah.
Waiting to get the shot at AJ, waiting for this, then rematches, then negotiations with Fury, and then it hasn't been this. I mean, he's made it as quick as he could, quite literally as quick as he could, by taking a rematch clause against Anthony Joshua, doing this, like making concessions here and there to try and get to the goal.
Because he's the when he came up into heavyweight, he very quickly became the ultimate who needs him, didn't he? But he's been able to make it happen, and largely thanks to Riyadh season, it's happened when it comes to Fury. But the real shame for him is because of the current world geopolitical situation. He can't have this amazing final hurrah in Ukraine, because he really deserves that. Or it wouldn't even have to be a final hurrah, just like now he's done it all, just have that fight. But it's just not really... It's not possible at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where he does go. I think I kind of lean towards what you've said, Andy. I would like to see him hang the gloves up, because boxing is full of less than perfect endings, and I think his would be a perfect ending. If he could hang up his gloves after that, it would be brilliant, wouldn't it? And it'd be a motivator for Fury AJ, wouldn't it? Because they'd stick a belt on the line for it, and there would be another sort of an added ingredient to that story, although it's like the kind of like, if they box without a title on the line now, they're both like off the back of losses or numerous losses or whatever, it's a bit like it just feels really, really tainted. But then if you stick a title on the line, that doesn't change anything in terms of what has happened, but it just adds that extra ingredient, that extra bit of spice to it. And once again, it's like, right, they can start talking about who's going to be king again of the division and stuff like that. But and then them two can disappear, and we just have an absolute free-for-all on the heavyweight division.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
That's it. And that could be really, really exciting. But he's the man, and we all know it. And at the minute, any fight that doesn't involve him, it doesn't mean it can't be a really good fight and be an interesting fight. But ultimately, if you've got to go and see him, haven't you?
He's the man.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, no matter how good Dubois looks against Joseph Parker or vice versa, it doesn't matter. But yeah, just staying with that, we were going to come on to that. Tyson Fury. What next for Tyson Fury? It seems to be the general consensus is it's Joshua or retirement next for Tyson Fury. Do you believe that, Andy? I know from the past experiences that you've had with Tyson, something that you mentioned on the broadcast this weekend. He said in the past that he sees himself hanging around in the sport much longer, potentially after his kind of sell-by date, as it were. What do you think's next for Fury?
I think he'll keep going. And the logical fight for everyone involved is Joshua, because he decided not to activate that immediate rematch clause against Dubois, which I think was wise. Because if he were to have lost the rematch, then the fight with Fury, whatever happened this weekend, the kind of shine goes off it further, it would have become hard to justify if Fury had won, and with Fury having lost, if Joshua then went and lost in February as well, then people might look at it and just think, like, this is just too blatant a cash grab, really. But as it is, I think they can absolutely do it, and there'll always be massive interest in it. And it's going to take something like that, because to keep him interested, basically, motivation is king, isn't it? With everybody, but particularly with someone like him. So I feel like that probably is the only other fight that he could really get up for. I was talking to Matt about this, Matt Macklin, after the weigh-in. We were kind of talking about the couple of days and the face-off, the long face-off, and then he was couldn't wait to get out of there at the weigh-in, and how if he won, then 1-1 and a trilogy would be great, but that if he lost, you kind of feared for him a bit, because defeats are really, really hard to take at the best of times. But when you've been recognised as the number one, and then all of a sudden you lose a fight, and then if you lose another one, how would he square that away and live the rest of his life? And it sounds a bit bleak, but I think given the kind of character he is and the problems that he's had, and they're always ongoing, aren't they? Those kind of mental health issues. Luckily for me, I don't really have any experience, but it's the kind of thing I'm sure where they need to be kind of consistently addressed.
It's
hard.
You look at AJ after losing back to Usyk, and his reaction in the ring. It was probably a good thing for him mentally in a way, because it happened there and then, and it didn't build or anything.
Flushed it out.
Yeah, just got rid of it in one night. Although probably from a PR standpoint, it was
when Derek Chisora is telling you to calm down, you need to calm down.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but it's. I think Fury's. It's AJ or retire, really. As much as boxing fans would like, I'd be interested in a Zhang fight, because that would be two massive men, especially if it was in like China or something. That'd be
everyone wants to see Zhang have a big fight in China, Beijing in the Bird's Nest. We've all talked about it for ages.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Oh man, boxing's about spectacles. That's what you want. You want that Fury against Zhang in the Bird's Nest, or you could go Fury versus Broccoli in Congo, and you could fight Alunga Makabu. You could fight his brother on the undercard. There you go.
There you go.
We're making it happen.
That's what the show's all about. Just trying to find me an undercard to fight.
That's the whole reason why we've got him in today. We've got 10% of his next purse, if we can get him a deal. Shout out Ben Shalom, man. But anyway, okay. Final one on that then. Who wins? Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua? Let's set the scene, Andy. It's June. It's Wembley Stadium. It's a lovely overcast day, and Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua finally get in the ring to settle their decade-long feud. How does that fight go, based on everything we've seen?
I think you have to make Fury a heavy favourite, because he's just had two competitive, really good fights against the best heavyweight out there. He's stood on very nearly, at times, absolutely equal terms. He's won rounds in there. Those were two really, really high-level fights, really good fights, close fights. And AJ, on the other hand, during roughly the same period, had the win against Wallin, the knockout against Ngannou. It's just not. It's not the same kind of. It's not the same kind of resume, is it? It's just not. They've been doing different things.
Chris?
Yeah.
And the defeat against Dubois, obviously.
Yeah, that's it. And exactly what Andy said there. If you look at their records, I mean, Fury going into the first Usyk fight didn't really have a decent performance for many years, but then performed well in the first fight, performed well in the second fight. AJ seems like he's the same situation, but on the back of a bad loss as well. In terms, he might have won fights and got some good knockouts, but against who? But yeah, you make Fury a favourite. He's huge, but I think AJ's biggest sort of kryptonite is hard punches, like known hard. But obviously Fury can punch, and he could easily, but he's not. He's more of a boxer, sort of, And then the knockouts come off it. He's not looking for a big shot, and he's not like he's turning really quick on a counter and stuff like that. He does counter well, but it's not like he's really just tucking up, catching, countering. So I think it would be an interesting fight, and you'd think that AJ would be as professional as always and sort of be in great shape and everything. But I think that would be the worry for me if you were Team Fury, is how motivated is he? Does he see AJ and go, he hasn't boxed anyone, he's sort of knocked out by Dubai? Does he look at and then sort of take his eye off the ball, like, and perform, half as well as he has done in the last 2 fights? Then it makes it a very interesting fight. But that's the beauty of boxing. You don't know who's going to turn up on the night, what version of people are going to turn up. But yeah, you make Fury a heavy favourite.
It's part of the reason why Usyk's so impressive, because you kind of, as well as anybody, you know what you're going to get from him every time. Yeah. You mentioned that consistency.
What's been good about those 2 fights too is that, I mean, it's been so much that's been good about them, but people like to kind of detract, don't they? But no one's really, I've not heard anyone say, Usyk's not all that, Fury's shot. No one's gone down that bullshit road, have they? It's just everybody's looked at those 2 fights and thought, holy shit, like, those are 2 very high level fights between 2 really good fighters. Fury is a very, very good fighter. It's just that Usyk is just, absolutely
Usyk's resume is one of the best in boxing history, probably, in terms of the level he's boxed at. Cruiserweight, I said this before on a show last week, that Usyk's resume at cruiserweight is phenomenal, but they weren't big enough names. Like, if they were all Brits, like on his cruiserweight record, then obviously he had Bellew, but the rest of them are like phenomenal fighters. But if they're all Brits, people would have been raving about him even more than they already were. Gasayev, Breedis.
Let's just
Michael Hunter.
I'll just dive in there, Chris, because we're gonna talk about that now. So let's just run through Usyk's resume from his first world title fight onwards.
What fight was that? His 8th?
Krzysztof Grabowski, I think it was his 11th fight.
I think it was his 10th. I think he was 9.
He was 9-0. It was his 10th fight. That's why Andy gets all of the big gigs. That's why I'm here. But anyway, Krzysztof Grabowski in Poland, of course, a win there. Thabiso Machuno, future Chris Billam-Smith opponent, in 9 rounds in his first defence in America. Michael Hunter, of course, we all know about Michael Hunter. Marco Hook, tied with Johnny Nelson as the most defences by a cruiserweight champion.
He was there last week, actually.
Hook,
yeah,
it doesn't surprise me.
Sure,
doesn't surprise me.
He's not making a comeback, is he?
No. If you're fighting Johnny, anyone get that on a Riyadh season event somewhere. Anyway, moving on. Myris Breidis, Murat Gassiev, Tony Bellew. All right, Chaz Witherspoon in his heavyweight debut. We're going into the heavyweights now.
It was supposed to be Takam. His heavyweight debut.
It was supposed to be. So do you remember? Because it was the mooted fight originally was Povetkin, and I loved that fight. And then it wasn't that, and then it was Takam, and then it was Tyrone Spong, and then it was Vlada, and then it was Chaz Witherspoon.
Takam was, because I remember I was scheduled to do that fight, and then it got postponed, didn't it? And then it didn't happen. But I remember thinking at the time that Takam was pretty bold for a suitably bold for a first fight at heavyweight.
But what he's done since then as well. Takam,
been around since then. Then obviously going to the heavyweights. Yes, Chisora, 2 wins over AJ, 1 win over Daniel Dubois, and 2 wins over Tyson Fury.
That was a good performance from Chisora. I know that Usyk was like early in his heavyweight journey, but that ages well, doesn't it? Because I remember watching that at the time, and after watching that, I felt that I fancied Joshua to beat Usyk, because Chisora made him work really hard that night. Usyk won that fight. I know there was someone at ringside who felt that Chisora got it. Usyk won that fight, but Chisora made him work hard. But I guess what I probably didn't realise at the time is that Chisora brings a kind of pressure in the way that he brings it, and he does it well.
Stylistic.
Yeah, physically, he's always
never going to go in.
No, he was exactly.
It's similar to why Daniel,
and that's what I missed about it.
Similar to why Daniel Dubois had. I mean, obviously he got stopped, whereas AJ went the distance both times. But in the moments where he had the success, it was all that physicality and closing the gap and being strong in there, which is what Chisora did so well for those first 3 or 4 rounds. Physically, he's got that type of style, Chisora, where if you're not a big heavyweight and you can't essentially deter him with punching power and its angles, and so because I mean Chisora, Usyk would spin off to an angle and Chisora would just throw a shot out here, just to cut him off, and just anything was just coming off. It was a really mental performance.
A brilliant fight for Usyk to have, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It really
because it gets you conditioned to that physicality. And nobody, I remember saying this at the time, who in the heavyweight division fights like Derek Chisora? No one. Like, there hasn't been a fighter in the heavyweight division who fights like him for a long time. Kind of like a smallish heavyweight, and makes himself even smaller, coming forward, sort of like rolling on the inside. It was Joe Frazier style, like with the cross block and stuff. No one boxes like that. So him having a hard fight for certainly the first 3 or 4 rounds, it's kind of expected. With all that being said, I'm going to come to you first, Chris. Where does Oleksandr Usyk rank? It's difficult with these because we talk about kind of in the all-time pantheon of greats. I mean, it's difficult to really place somebody outside of their own era, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway. Where do we rank Usyk now in kind of heavyweight folklore, and indeed kind of, I guess, the mythical pound for pound folklore?
It's just, I always struggle with it because times, like, everyone talks about...
Get into your mic.
Everyone talks about Muhammad Ali, heavyweight, but he got in the ring lighter than I do as a cruiserweight. So I always struggle with putting eras against each other. You look at Tyson and think like Mike Tyson in his prime against Usyk, and Tyson isn't most of the time isn't that high up in people's lists a lot of the time. So it's really hard, but just because of everything he's done in his resume as a fighter, just is phenomenal. I don't know where I'd rank him. I can't think. We haven't got long enough for me to wait and go through it. It would take me a while, but just rather than compare him, although we're going to do that, just appreciate him. I think is one of them. You have to appreciate him and Fury. 2 great fights. Both turned up both times. High level of focus, great training camps. And yeah, that's all we can do is sit back and appreciate that and be content and almost present with what we've got. It's so common in boxing. I mean, you get out of the ring after a fight. The same happened to me when I boxed Lawrence. Like, what's next? I'm like, I'm not talking about what's next. I'm going to enjoy this because this it doesn't get better than this fighting where I was and everything. So it's kind of like that. It's just enjoy it and appreciate who Usyk is and what he's done.
And they're going to ask you to be slightly more fanciful in your response. What do you think about Oleksandr Usyk? I think one thing that we have to say is obviously he is somebody who I believe, correct me if you think I'm mistaken, who could have competed in any era. I mean, we've seen people, you mentioned earlier, I haven't seen too many people, we've seen a few crazy American takes, you know who you are if you're watching, talking about Usyk wouldn't have competed with this guy and that guy. I remember I spoke to Lennox Lewis a couple of months ago before the fight, and he was like, he absolutely could have competed against me, Holyfield, Tyson, Bo, those guys of that era. But
these are the people you listen to.
Yeah, you listen to Lennox. It's funny, the tweet was like, he wouldn't have competed with Lennox Lewis. I spoke to Lennox, he said he would, but anyway. Where would you put Usyk in that pantheon? I mean, he's got to be right up there. He is, by definition, an all-time great.
He is. He absolutely is. And you have to put him right up there. Like Chris says, comparing people across eras is hard because you've got all sorts of things that aren't the same. The science behind it, all the training methods, all the rest of it, they're not the same. But if you imagine that somebody from years ago, if Jack Dempsey had the same training regime and resources that they have now, then he would have been better than he was back then. And people have got bigger over the years as well. So heavyweights now are not as they were 100 years ago because the human race has evolved. And even Lennox Lewis, like big guy, big heavyweight at the time, by today's standards, just a kind of normal size heavyweight, really.
6'5", Lennox?
Yeah, and he was about 240 most of the time, wasn't he? So he was,
not as big as Lawrence.
Yeah, he's not Tyson Fury, who is just this huge man. So I think you've got to put him right up there, Usyk, because you look at the skill set. And it's absolutely exceptional. And nobody is going to have an easy night with Oleksandr Usyk. Nobody, because Fury is this absolute anomaly, as in he's a terrifically skillful guy, but massive. So if anyone was ever going to be able to make that size really count, it would be him. And he couldn't quite do it. He did it at times, but he couldn't quite do it consistently enough to get this guy where he wanted him and beat him. So he has to be right up there. And in terms of fantasy matchups, a late 80s Tyson, when he was at his absolute peak, when he weighed like 215, 220 against Usyk. Oh my God. Imagine that. Imagine that with the speed and explosivity of Tyson and the pressure he could bring, and the way that he did it against someone like Usyk. You know, you'd be watching it'd be like a computer game. You know, it'd be ridiculous. I think if I could put him against anyone in heavyweight history, that's who I would put him against.
How's that fight go?
I don't know, because he doesn't get a great, as Chris said, like, people revise careers, don't they? And sometimes people get better the longer they're retired. I think someone like Lennox maybe didn't get the credit he deserved at the time, but now people look at it and think, actually, you know what, he's right up there.
Beat every man he faced.
Yeah, and with Tyson, because he went on too long, and when you fight the way he did, when that explosivity goes, you're going to fade. And with the way that he lived his life and the things that happened to him, he would have peaked when he beat Spinks. You know, that kind of Tyson. He was always going to burn bright and fade quick with his skill
everything
set.
To do with his
and
whole
everything
makeup.
else that was going on. But
yeah.
even if he'd really lived the life, that was still going to happen because of the way he boxed. But that absolute wrecking machine who was around in the late 80s, you know, he was an unbelievable piece of work. I feel like Usyk would probably just be a bit too cute, but it would have been an astonishing sight to watch those two fight each other.
Yeah.
It would have been very much it's either Tyson early or...
He loves those predictions. He loves those predictions.
It would be one of those.
The longer it went, the longer beat. I know nobody's beaten Usyk, so the idea, you know, it is hilarious, kind of drawing up the blueprints. But my feeling during the week was last week that Fury, with the extra weight and the mood he was in, that he might be thinking to himself, if it goes 12 rounds, I'm not going to win, because beating him over 12 rounds with his engine is like borderline impossible. So I'm going to have to try and take him out in 8 or 9. After that, I may well gas and get stopped myself, but that's what I'm going to try and do. And I was wrong, as it turned out. But Usyk, yeah, I mean, beating him at all has proved to be impossible. But you've always had the feeling that if anybody's going to do it, they're going to have to knock him out. But then again, no one's come remotely close to doing that. And over those 24 rounds, did he ever at any point look really hurt? And the answer is no.
I wouldn't say. He probably got buzzed more at cruiserweight than he has at heavyweight. Maybe because of the speed. Like, a few people buzzed him at
Gassiev did, didn't he?
Gassiev.
And right hand, yeah.
Breedis landed a few.
Oh, no, Gassiev didn't. Breedis did, yeah. That's right.
Gassiev hit him with a right hand at the end of the 4th round, but he took it. But his head went... Yeah. I remember seeing the time. I remember thinking at the time, like, "Boy, you got a good chin." It's the only shot that Gassiev landed in the whole fight. Yeah, knocked out a horse.
Was an absolute
massive right hand.
But we are just clutching at straws with him, and you know, in the amateurs, Beterbiev made him take a knee with a body shot. I think Majidov did as well, Magomedov Majidov. But it's you're grasping at straws.
Big up Sean Porter.
There we go, yeah. Sean Porter, unbelievable. Boxing's most overused piece of trivia.
I would never stop going on about that if I was Sean Porter.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Before we move on, my two penneth is he's the greatest heavyweight since Lennox Lewis. Greater than Vlad. As great as Vlad was. How many fights did Vlad win as the underdog? Okay, yeah, he wasn't necessarily in the deepest, and he beat what was in front of him. You know.
I think he'd probably take that Vladimir as well. I think he probably...
I mean, like, for Usyk to win, like, it's such an outlier, beating a man who's 55 pounds heavier than you, and the way that he's gone about it as well, going, like, okay... I do think he's the greatest heavyweight since Lennox Lewis, as far as kind of, you know, pound for pound. Like, Terence Crawford said this brilliantly after the first fight. Like, you got to give him his credit. You got to give Usyk his credit. He's fighting a guy who is quite literally, I think the first fight is 40 pounds, so only 40 pounds heavier than him. To beat somebody like that in the fashion that he did in both instances. And then Anthony Joshua, like we always talk about, you know, we spoke about it with Terence Crawford. You know, Crawford brilliant against Spence. If he were to beat Jaron Ennis, the next guy coming through, Usyk may well have already done that with Daniel Dubois. All of the signs are there that he's already done that this could be the next dominant heavyweight coming through. He's already beat him, and he's up for beating him again if he gets in the ring and talks his shit. You know, like he's that kind of character. I think he is, for this century, a top 3 fighter of this century. Pacquiao, Mayweather, Usyk.
Oh yeah,
more than I rate him higher than Canelo.
Yeah,
Inoue's in that bracket, but I'd still go for Usyk. Like, and it's difficult because, okay, Inoue's not going to fight somebody who's literally 40, 50 pounds heavier than him.
Percentage-wise, what would it be percentage-wise? It would probably be like...
I mean, it's still 25% heavier than him.
25% heavier. So is Inoue going to even do that?
No,
what I mean? So
and obviously that's part and parcel of being a heavyweight with no cap on who you could be fighting, but weight wise. But yeah, for me that's where he sits. He could compete in any era. I think if I was going to put somebody in the other corner to try and beat him, it would be Lennox Lewis, by virtue of being a big lump who can throw all the shots in the book as well. And I feel like, with respect to Fury, I think Lennox is a better fighter than him and was a better fighter than him, but splitting hairs between some of the greatest heavyweights of all time here.
Riddick Bowe, though, that would be
I used to think that, but I just think Riddick Bowe's a little bit too flat-footed.
Evander versus Usyk would be...
At cruiserweight as well, would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
It'd be an unbelievable fight. But yeah, I used to think that about Bowe as well. I used to think Bowe and Fury would have been a really great fight between two, even that Big Daddy Bowe wouldn't have been that big nowadays. Like Big George Foreman, not that big nowadays.
That's it.
But yeah, I'd probably put Lennox in the other side. But he could have competed in any era. And like what you mentioned earlier about heavyweights getting bigger is, yes, it's absolutely true. But you've got in Usyk somebody who is kind of a normal-sized heavyweight, or what people used to consider was a normal-sized heavyweight, and you've seen how well he's performed. So, you could plonk him in in the 70s with Fraser, with Ali before that in the 60s, with Liston and Floyd Patterson and people like that. He could have definitely competed. The 90s with Bowe, Holyfield, Lewis, Tyson, even the guys below that, like Usyk against David Tua would have been a great fight. Yeah. Like, it would have been a brilliant fight because he probably wouldn't have hurt Tua, but Tua would have kept coming and coming and coming. It would have been great. But yeah, I think he's a genuine, legitimate all-time great. And, I don't think there really is any room for debate anymore. So let's not debate it anymore. Let's move on and talk about the undercard. Chris, going to come to you first because we've touched on the subject. I think we've gone mental on that, but that's fine. So we're going to try and whiz through a little bit anyway on the undercard. Lot to talk about. Moses Itauma.
Easy to whiz through that fight.
Easy to whiz through that fight because it was about a minute and a half long. Just first and foremost, what did you make of his performance? Obviously, a lot of people beforehand potentially dubbed Demsey McKean as a bit of a step up. Went almost 12 with Filip Hrgovic, another very good fighter in his own right. Scythed down inside a round by Moses Itauma.
Yeah, well, I think I spoke to you before it, and I said Dempsey was in the gym sparring Daniel, and Daniel, he hurts everyone he spars pretty much, and I think he did hurt Dempsey in the end, but he took a lot of shot. I thought decent, like he's a decent, durable guy, but he's just way too crisp. Moses, he was so way too crisp and just sharp of the speed, and just as I think he lands it, Shane goes, it's the speed, and he goes, it's the speed, he goes, boom, and just nails him with the left hand, and he's down. So yeah, it was a great performance. You can see the confidence really building in him now. I think I seen an interview, someone saying, oh yeah, my brother said to me, like, Itauma versus Usyk next year, like, that's the confidence in him, and always go on about how boxing is a very physical sport, but it's more a mental sport than anything else. And you look at Daniel and you see that confidence rising, going in there with AJ and stuff, and then even off the back of it, I think it's the same with Moses now. He's having those steps up, and it was good matchmaking. A very needed step up for a 19-year-old. Not forget that. Yeah, and I think he hasn't got long though, has he? Because he wants to beat. If he beats Tyson's record, he's got about 5 months less than that.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, it depends on what they want to do with it. Obviously, we'll come on to talk about what's next for him. Kubrat Pulev has got a version of a heavyweight title. Yeah. It is a version of a heavyweight title, but it is still a version of a heavyweight title. So we could come on to that.
He'd need paying a lot of money, Kubrat Pulev, to do that.
Yeah.
And if you
he'd be up for it though, because he's a mad Bulgarian bastard, isn't he? He's a crazy fella, Pulev. Yeah. He is probably. We've spoken about this in the past, isn't he? He is proper like hard man of the forest levels of tough, isn't he?
That's who they're going to. Those are the kinds of people you can tempt into fighting Itauma now.
Yeah.
Anyone a bit more sensible, shall we say, isn't going to want to do it, because if you're above him in the rankings, before the weekend he was 6 with the WBO and 10 with the WBA, I think. If you're above him in the rankings, why on earth would you fight him? It doesn't mean you're scared. Or that you don't think you can beat him, but what's in it for you?
The risk versus the reward.
I was saying to him,
if you beat him,
you beat a 19-year-old
overhyped guy. And if you lose to him, you lost to a 19-year-old. Like,
Yeah.
it's you got.
And for a lot of people, we talk about high risk, low reward. We were laughing about it at ringside, off air, that for almost everybody, from what we've seen, Itauma it's not high risk, no reward. It's certain defeat, not enough reward.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So
You need to be fighting him out in Saudi for a decent game.
I guess
That's why Demsey McKean ended up fighting.
Yeah, the problem is that you can't, at the minute, it just doesn't seem possible to get in those seasoning fights that you want for him. And probably the first time that we're going to find out how he really holds a shot will be right up at the top level, which is not ideal, is it? But what else do you do? And you find out a lot in sparring, I guess.
Yeah, speaking of which, so I wanted to speak to our resident guest, Mr. Billam-Smith. Of course, we've had a lot, and we've spoken kind of openly, as has Lawrence Okoli, another former stablemate of yours, about Moses Itauma in the gym, or Enrico Itauma, as we once knew him a few years ago. Now, you were around for those kind of fabled spars in the gym. Now, it's all public knowledge. Obviously, Lawrence Okoli has spoken about it very, very openly. He spoke to you about it, spoke to me on a podcast. And he described sparring Moses Itauma at 15 years of age as some of the hardest rounds of his life. Now, I remember, I've said this on the pod before, your trainer, Shane McGregor, not somebody who hands out praise willy-nilly. I remember speaking to him on the phone after the first day that Moses was in the gym, and he said, I've had this kid in the gym. He's a future undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Now,
he was only about 93 to 95 kilo at the time. I actually missed the first time they sparred. I think I'd either trained earlier that morning and was napping or something, so I missed it. But I remember him coming down the second time. Once again, Shane always says, yeah, it has to be at 4 o'clock. We don't usually spar at that time, but he was coming from school. So yeah, he turned up in his school uniform, gets changed, and yeah, a phenomenal talent, really, like, confidence, sticking on people. 15 years old, like. Lawrence wasn't a world champion when he first sparred.
He was sparring for the Glowacki fight, which then got rearranged, so he boxed Nikodem Jaszewski.
Oh yeah, Jaszewski, yeah. And then sparred him for the second Glowacki fight, and then I believe he sparred him again once he was world champion as well. Can't think who that would have been for, because I don't think he boxed any.
Dylan Prazovic?
He wasn't a southpaw though, so I can't see why you would have got him in for no reason. Maybe he didn't. I don't. But yeah,
he's in the gym to spar Daniel though.
And then I've seen him spar Daniel, and yeah, just superb talent. I don't think he ever got beat as an amateur. I don't think he's been beat as a pro. So for me, there would be question marks of how you deal with the adversity, because there has been that.
That's it,
and that's always the worry. I think I heard him on George's podcast say he had a bad spar once and thought about quitting boxing, but when he was like 13, 14 years old, you're going to have those thoughts, and his brother talked him back into it or whatever. But phenomenal talent, the confidence is sky high. There will be adversity. It just depends on how he deals with it, whether that's in the ring, in a training camp, an injury. It could be loads of things. Not feeling well on a fight night or a fight week, and how you deal with all that, because the very best they just turn up and do it and find a way, even if they've had a bad training camp, or they've had a bad spar. You just got to turn up and you've got to perform. And for a young kid like him, he's got they're the question marks. I think he'll have a decent. I've never saw him hurt in the gym. I can't remember any significant shots necessarily land there. I thought, he's taken that well, but he would have got hit by Daniel and Lawrence, and both big punches.
What was it about him? I mean, you get a lot of world-class sparring come through the gym, and not all, you get amateurs and people who are very sort of inexperienced relatively come through the gym. A 15-year-old, particularly a bigger 15-year-old, sparring cruiserweights and heavyweights. What was it about him that caught your eye?
It was just natural. You get those sort of talents that just, it doesn't seem hard for him. It doesn't. He doesn't think, right, when he throws this, I'm going to throw it. It just happens, and that it's one of them. Adam Azim's kind of similar. Things just happen. He's not going, right, I'm going to wait for him to do this, or I'm going to try and set him to do this up. Like Usyk sets things up. He'll make people set traps and make people. These guys will do it, but not know they're doing it, and he might just see a jab and he'll just slip and throw a right uppercut. from that southpaw stance, and it's just like, and then put a left hand on the end, whoop, 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 and it's just like, where did that come from? Like, you can't think that quick consciously. It's just all subconscious with him, and he's just a phenomenal talent.
We're all very excited about him, aren't we, Andy, on the Boxing Show? We've been singing his praises now since, I think, the Europeans was April 2022, the Youth Europeans, where he knocked out every opponent in the first round. Remember, because he was sparring at the gym, wasn't he? And then
sparring Daniel on Tuesday.
Sparring Daniel DeBar on the Tuesday, beating up some 16-year-old from Hungary on the Thursday, man. Imagine that would be a horrible draw. That's what happened to him in the amateurs, wasn't it? In this country, he couldn't get a fight. I think he had 13 fights or something.
No, very few,
country.
And then at the World Youth Championships, I think one fighter might have lasted the 3 rounds, but everybody else got stopped quick.
Yeah. It's freakish. It's unbelievable, and we're not. I don't think anyway. I mean, people may correct us in the comments. I don't think we're guilty of blowing the trumpet too soon or too loudly on this show for people beforehand. But he has that kind of wonder kid. Like, it's difficult. It's particularly with the heavyweights nowadays, the flip side to them being bigger guys is that, when you've got somebody who turns up, and he spoke about this fairly recently, because he learned to box when he was smaller, he still retained his skills, and he's got that speed and that kind of looseness that you don't see in the heavyweight division now. He kind of blows the doors off, and you see it in the seniors and the pros, because that's another thing that we always very cautionary about. He hasn't done the seniors yet, and it's different when you're fighting grown men, and he's going in there. And Mariusz Vach, really one of the most durable guys in the heavyweight division for the last 15, 20 years. Okay, yeah, he's old now, he's not the same. Blew him out in a couple of rounds. Demsey McKean went 12 rounds with Filip Hrgovic, blew him out in 90 seconds.
With Mariusz Vach as well, it wasn't just the fact that he stopped him, it was the fact that you looked at Vach's face as it was happening, and he's standing there, Mariusz Vach, just thinking, what's this?
Yeah, whoa, I've had 50 fights.
Ghost. He looked like he'd seen a ghost.
It's the speed.
It is the speed, isn't it?
It's the speed. Like you look at, some people might, if you take a little bit of speed out, there will be durable guys in the division who will be able to ride shots, and someone, or like a Caballel, who will be able to just take enough out of it and keep applying pressure, and Bacoli and stuff like that. But when you don't see him coming, as Dempsey didn't the other day, set up really well with that feint to the body, then up, down, boom, just dropped it, and so committed to the shot. For a 19-year-old to be that committed to a bloke who's bigger than him, and just land that shot, you just let all the power through the shot. It was similar to AJ's knockout against Ngannou in terms of like when he just sunk that right hand in. But it's the speed. The speed. If he ever loses the speed, then it'll be a much tougher ask for him. But it's the speed that gets it, and obviously speed is kind of a thing that you do lose with age. Over the years we've seen it, but he's that young that he's got 10 years of speed left. Not sure if it's like an energy bar where you lose it if you use it, sort of thing. So as long as he keeps speed, it's a really interesting prospect.
Where next for him, Andy? We spoke about him, I think, after the Mariusz Vach performance, and I said, I think at the time, I said the only people I wouldn't put him in with are Usyk, Fury, and Bacoli. What do you think now? I mean, it's difficult. People are talking about, he needs a step up. He just knocked out a guy in a round. He almost went 12 in a final eliminator.
It's really difficult because matching him is going to be tough, because they'll have it expensive. They'll have accepted that it's going to be expensive, but he's going to fight on Riyadh season, so that's not necessarily a problem. But it's just, where do you, for want of a better word, find that fighter who is kind of mad enough to take the fight, who is still mid-career or still at a very good level in their career, where they've still got ambition and feeling like they've got things that they can achieve, and that they don't look at Itauma and think, okay, they're recruiting me as being a name for his record, and not cooperating, but knowing that that's what they're there for. How do you get someone like that to fight him? Because if you look at the UK fighters, Fabio is in a great position because they've got the same trainer,
he's like,
so
he
can step back from that and say, well, of course I would, but I can't. Lawrence was completely honest with me on the stream in Saudi. Would have been better have Bivol. Moses was on the stream. Lawrence came on, He'd won his Bridgerweight world title, and I said to him, and he told the story, and he told it really well about the sparring. I said, so would you fancy it with him in the future? And on air, he just shook his head and said, no, absolutely not. And it was just a brilliantly honest reaction. Not many people would do that. He just kind of, in that kind of languid way he just tilted his head back, shook his head, and was like, no, 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 no. So I don't know really how you go about recruiting someone for the job. It may well be that he's going to be well ranked. He's in the top 10 with a couple already. He might be one of those guys where people will only fight him if they absolutely have to, and even then they might pull out of eliminators. And it might sound like we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves, but look at what he's done. And you can't be anything other than convinced by it. And it's not ideal that he hasn't had any adversity, like Chris says. And it may well be that he has to try and handle that for the first time in the white heat of a really big fight. And it could be a head clash and a cut, or it could be breaking your hand, or it could be whatever it might be, or having a disastrous fight week, or whatever it is. But that's the way that train is headed. And it's a good problem to have, as to use a bit of football manager speak.
I think the only person I'd see fighting him from that sort of top level is like a Caballero, because he's got no one really talks about him, and he's kind of in the who needs him club.
He's boxing Zhang?
Yep.
Oh, he is fighting Zhang.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, of course. That eliminator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like an interim belt. I think it's a WBC
yeah,
interim belt. Love an interim belt at the minute. There's interim belts all over the gaff. Anyway.
But, yeah, I mean, if he beat Zhang, then he's probably not going to want to fight him.
Final eliminator, he'd be like, nah, I'm going to fight. Fight for the world title, mate.
That's the problem.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, I forgot about that fight.
I got a name. Jermaine Franklin.
Okay, yeah.
Very good.
Durable guy. Been in there with Joshua. Been in there with Dillian White.
Right, and he's kind of out in the cold, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's not featured in the Riyadh season. Yeah, why
Not
wouldn't
been
he
stopped.
Why wouldn't he want to do it? Head over to Saudi, get paid well. Yeah, if I were him, you would look at that, wouldn't you, surely, and think, okay, yeah, I'll have some of that. Because, again, he won't be looking at him thinking, oh, well, I'll just see how I'll do. He'll be thinking, no, I can beat him. He'll pretty genuinely think he can win.
Yeah. I both times he boxed White and Joshua, I was like, this will go points, because he was in there with Daniel getting nailed. And Daniel hits people with 18-ounce gloves, and a lot of them go over. And he was just taking them, just waving them back in, like that sort of American cockiness and confidence, and it was good to see, because and those rounds would have been so valuable for Daniel, because you're hitting someone that in the way you're used to people going over, and they're just coming back at you. So that would have been a big part of Daniel's learning, I think, those rounds with Jermaine Franklin. And then Franklin obviously went in there and just got hit clean, both Joshua and White, and just kept moving forward and kept going. So yeah, that would be a really interesting fight. I think that's a great name.
There's talk about Joe Joyce as well, or potentially the winner of Derek Chisora. Oh, God. Derek Chisora against Otto Wallin. I'm not sure if that's a suitable opponent for Derek Chisora's last fight. If it is indeed. Talma against Chisora. Yeah, no thanks. Joe Joyce, again, sort of on the outside.
You might get answers in terms of that adversity.
Yeah, potentially, because Chisora's going to go and try and stick it on him.
Do what he did against Usyk and just, I think, throw caution to the wind and just go for it. And
it's just a very different time. It's a very hard night. But yeah, okay, right, before we move on, I'm going to throw this one in there. You won't thank me for it. If the fight was to happen this year, Daniel Dubois versus Moses Itauma.
It's tricky, that.
It's really tricky, because I think, it's the speed. The speed just gives Moses that massive chance, but Daniel's got a great chin. And I said this to a member of AJ's team before the fight. I said, Daniel's got an underrated chin. People think he hasn't because he, took a knee and stuff, but it's his chin's solid. And he showed that against AJ. But once again, the speed is you lose some of that edge with your chin when the speed comes in. Right now, you have to. I don't know. I don't know. If I had to pick one, I'd go Moses. I would now. He's really filled into the weight. I think he's 115 kilo now.
That's another thing.
When he was sparring Daniel to begin with, he was about 105. and once again he's 10 kilos extra, but kept that speed. I'd probably go Moses.
Andy?
Yeah, I think I probably would too, because I think he was 249 at the weekend, so that's 17 stone 11. I think that was half a stone heavier than he's been at any point previously, which is to be expected because he's 19. And when I've seen him before, I've just thought, like, just here across the shoulders and the pectorals, there was more weight to come, and I think there still is. So he will be a very compact, kind of like 18 and a half stone, I think, by the time he sort of hits his physical peak. So like another 10 pounds or something like that,
and another 10 years.
Yeah, it is the speed. It is the speed. I mean, it would be a great fight, and it's not one. I was going to say it's not one that Queensberry would really want to make, or is it? Because if they want to, a
lot of investment in both.
In both of them.
Yeah, because Moses is like the second Daniel Dubois, with the hype and the money behind him and the backing, and they chucked him in with Joe Joyce, and it was kind of a winner stays on. So why not the top level?
Those belts become fragmented, or if Moses Itauma boxes Kubrat Pulev and then something happens with the WBA and he beats Pulev, he gets elevated, you could see that being, a Queensberry unification down the line, heavyweight unification, Dubois versus Itauma for the IBF and WBA or whatever it is,
Yeah, and I think you another way in which you can tell that they're so confident in him is outside the ring, is that they're working on him outside the ring, aren't they? Like, he's been put on quite a few things that I've done in Saudi weeks, and he's good company. He's got something to say, and you can tell that tactically he knows exactly what he's looking for and exactly what he's looking at. He's confident. He's not one of these characters who he's not shy. In fact, it's if anything, it's the opposite. He's that confident that he doesn't feel the need to say much. He probably could do with saying a bit more, but that side of it's kind of coming along as well, and he's got this kind of. I remember Mike Tyson in the early days had this kind of, obviously had this air of enormous menace about him, but he practically sleep his way through press conferences at times. I remember one where his hoodie was inside out. I can't remember who it was exactly, but he was practically just like sleeping on his arms, and then his opponent or a member of his opponent's team said something a bit kind of leery about, well, we've seen this and we're going to do this, and he was just like, he came awake and kind of like looked at them like that, and you just think, oh no, that was a terrible mistake. And he's kind of got a bit of that about him, I think, Itauma as well, where he I said it on Saturday, but there's this cartoon I used to watch when I was a kid, I can't remember what it was called, but it had this kind of like sleepy shark in it. He's kind of like drifting around until he isn't, and he's a bit like that. And you can do something with that. He's not Tyson, he's not from that background. He's not gonna say some of the bizarre things that we heard Tyson come out with, but at the same time he's got that air of kind of danger about him because of what we've seen him do in the ring.
He certainly does. The people guiding his career in Francis and Frank Warren know infinitely more about guiding a prospect than I do, but he's ready to go. I think I really couldn't be more sold on him. I've held back, as you know, on the last couple of podcasts, even though I've said, I think only these guys can fight him, but I have held back. I do feel like he is. I don't think there's many heavyweights who could beat him. I think I'd say Usyk would beat him. Just experience, know-how, knowledge, staying out of it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a foregone conclusion. Whatever, say in the comments. And Bakole is a hard night for anybody. But and
also, you don't want to waste time with him because, like Chris was saying, the speed is absolutely key, and physically, people are different, aren't they? And if the speed is the thing, then he's 19 now, but maybe his kind of peak. Maybe that will start to decrease from 25 onwards. Maybe
it's a younger physical peak. It's not the same for everybody. Like everybody always talks about mid-20s or mid to late 20s as your peak.
It depends on what your gifts are. That might, his peak might be kind of now for the next 5 or 6 years. And so rather than kind of try and tread water with him and see what Usyk does and see what other people, just get him in there. Because what you don't want is him getting complacent or stagnating or anything like that. Because 19 is young, but Tyson was young, and as we outlined, Tyson's strength was that explosivity. So don't hang around if you don't feel that you don't need to, and I don't think they will.
I think the only issue is once again that there's a few adversity,
Yeah.
and you can push someone to the top. But what if he went and boxed Usyk, and Usyk beat him close on points, but he's lost his O? Does he just lose that aura? Does that ego just like take over? Like, I've lost it, and you just lose that edge, and that would be the only worry with him, because I feel like with anyone who's been unbeaten their whole life, that's hard to take a loss and have that mindset of just, okay, yeah, let's just chuck him in there and see how he does, because then what do you do after, especially with all the investment and everything like that from a business point of view, but also from him as a person, like, what happens next? Great if he's got the right result, yeah, chuck me in there, and if it doesn't go my way, then it's a great learning curve, like. And if you knew he was that sort of character, but I don't think you are if you're that unbeaten.
Yeah, and he doesn't come across that way either. He's very much, I mean, he said it, I think, before his last couple of fights. So if I'm not dealing with him easy, then I'm not who I think I am. And there's a double-edged sword to that, isn't there? There's that confidence and bravado, but then if it doesn't go your way, it becomes
then all of a sudden
more,
you think about it, it's like, maybe I'm
not who I thought I was.
It's imposter syndrome.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, right. Staying with the heavyweight division, going to try and rattle through the rest of the card. Andy, going to come to you first. Johnny Fisher remains unbeaten with a controversial split decision win over Dave Allen. First things first, the right decision?
No, I thought it was the wrong decision. And first thing I want to kind of get out there about that, and we always say, is that that's not Johnny Fisher's fault. He showed big balls in that fight, Johnny Fisher, in the second half. He went about it in a way that Mark Tibbs, I think, wouldn't really have enjoyed, because he tried to slug it out with Dave Allen and tried to take him out, basically, rather than do what his corner were wanting him to try and do, which was keep it a bit longer and just try and win the rounds, basically. But there's no universe, I don't think, in which you could give Johnny Fisher more than 5 rounds, which means he loses on the knockdown. That's the absolute worst case scenario for Dave Allen from what I saw. That means you give Johnny the first 4, and that's not a given. That there's a round in there maybe you could give to Dave Allen, and you give Johnny the 10th. And I give him massive credit for kind of rallying in the 10th. I do think Dave felt that he was over the line already, and probably maybe took his foot off the gas, or maybe was just pretty knackered himself, because it was a really tough fight. But probably a combination of the two. He was knackered and thought, if I absolutely bring this to the max, then I could leave myself open and walk onto one, and I think I've done enough. So I thought he was unlucky. Dave Allen. I thought worst case it was 5-5 and he wins on the knockdown. But I mean that's we need to see it again. I think we need to see it again. It was a brutal heavyweight fight in the second half of it, because he got knocked down in the 5th, Johnny Fisher, and he did well. He did really well
in that 5th round.
He was, and that it happened pretty early in the round, didn't it? There was, I think, 2 minutes 17 left or something like that. At the point at which it happened. And what I give him enormous credit for, Johnny Fisher, is that in the 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th, when he was badly hurt a number of times, he didn't go down again. Because if he had, he couldn't have won. The fact that he managed to stay on his feet and only get knocked down once, that was what made it close enough that he ended up getting a split decision. So they found out a lot about him that night. But it was a roller coaster for him. But I did feel for Dave Allen, because he won.
Chris?
Yeah, I agree. I think Dave won the fight. I think I tweeted straight after the fight, 2 very hard men. Like, they both took. I've sparred Johnny, and like I said before, and he's a decent puncher, and he's landed on Dave, and we know how hard Dave is, and in a weird way it's nice to see he hasn't lost his punch resistance, because that would be a worry, but then at the same time you don't want to keep seeing him take more shots, but yeah, he's it was a decent little fight, especially, but I could kind of see it was going to go that way, even before the bell, but especially after the first couple of rounds. Johnny's landing a few shots and using a lot of energy, because he does when he punches. Just that you can almost hear it in his, the way he punches and the noise he makes, and use a lot of energy. And you can just see Dave sucking it up, walking forward, and that's what I've seen Dave do over and over again over the years. And I I was like, he's going to get to me. He's got those naughty gloves on, and he's going to land.
What was he wearing?
MX's.
Oh yeah.
I think MX, the old style 2.0s, I think. And yeah, they're a naughty glove, and and I was like, he's gonna soak this up, and Johnny will get tired because he's just punching himself out. That's kind of what happened, and then started taking more and more shots. Johnny did, and but like Andy said, all credit to Johnny. Two great blokes who seem like proper British blokes. Do you know what I mean? They're like two blokes who, Johnny spoke after the fight about how Dave's his hero and stuff like that, and he used to look up to him. And but two hard fighting men, and a lot of respect to them both as both people and fighters. But I'm gutted that Dave didn't get a decision. But at the same time, knowing Johnny as well as I do, and I've got to, we're pretty pally in the boxing world as such. Happy he hasn't lost his O, but that's the way boxing is, unfortunately. Dave deserved to win.
It was kind of an interesting fight, wasn't it, Andy, in a sense of you've got, Dave Allen, who was kind of the everyday lovable heavyweight of yesteryear, against the modern version of that in Johnny Fisher. But I think a big difference and what we saw on Saturday night was just that schooling and that experience of Dave Allen. For years he was kind of, in a lot of hard spars with your Anthony Joshua's, your Joe Joyce's, Fraser Clarke's, everybody else up there at the English Institute of Sport in Sheffield. He's boxed, I think people have forgotten, he boxed Dillian White, he boxed Lewis Ortiz, he boxed Tony Yoka. These are established, at one point or another, world-class fighters. Lewis Ortiz was arguably a top 2-3 heavyweight in the world when he boxed him.
At the time he took that fight,
no one wanted to fight him.
Absolute madness. At that period of his career, the training situation was always unclear, and a lot of the time we'd get to fight week, and I did a lot of those fights, and we discovered that he'd basically been training himself, or he'd turn up at fight week with
Mick Marsden.
Not even Mick. Like Mick would turn up on the night, but during the week he'd just be with his mate, who had kind of half trained him down at the local fitness first. And there was almost a kind of like masochistic element to it at times, where he would just take the hardest fight he possibly could, because he just wanted to try and prove how tough he was, and quite what was going on there with him mentally. I never really quite worked it out. But Lewis Ortiz, he lasted into the 7th of 8 rounds, and he was an absolute beast at that point. And then going away to France basically by himself, to take on Tony Yoka, lasted into the 10th. Those were just, I looked at those sometimes and just thought, what are you doing, Dave? Like, this isn't, you don't have to do this. But there was always some ability there. The one that he would have regretted was Lenroy Thomas outside at Bramall Lane, because
I was there that night.
That was set up for him to win that fight, and he just kind of froze a bit, didn't he?
Didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It was just not enough outpunch.
Commonwealth title,
and that was for the Commonwealth title. And for the rematch, he was on point, and he'd really trained, and he was kind of like 237, 238, I think. And then there was a head clash, and it was a technical draw. But he's always had some ability, and he is tough. He's not that tall, so he's decent at getting onto the inside. He's got that good jab which just appears from nowhere, no tell, nothing. And I think Shane said on the night he thinks he's left-handed, which would make sense, because
maybe that's why he calls himself the Doncaster De La Hoya, because De La Hoya's left-handed.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But Dave, sorry if I've interrupted there, Andy, but I remember Dave, I was on GB assessment with Dave in 2013. He was going for the 91 spot because that's what he was boxing at the time, and he turned up at 103 kilo, and you're not meant to be 5% over your weight. So we're allowed to be like 95 kilo max. I'm there at like 89 because I was boxing at 86, but it wasn't a international division. And he's like just in between sessions or at night just having KFC, just love KFC. I just remembered that's what Dave always loved. And then he always thought I was weird because I'd like write my sessions down and stuff like that, like be writing all my sessions down, and was more professional. But he had so much ability. He could go in there, they'd chuck him in with anyone, and he got offered a place on the squad, I think. And I think he turned it down and turned pro or something. Or maybe just they were like, you can have the spot if you box at 91. I can't remember exactly, but I remember doing hill sprints one morning with him, and I was like, okay, I'm not a good runner, but I'm a good trier. And me and another lad were, it was I forgot what they call it, the bowl. So you like sprint up the hill and you plod around the rest of it, and then sprint up the hill. And on the first one, like me and another lad who's from Sunderland, running up, and we're like, me and him like going up. Dave just flew past us like up this hill, and he's like 10 kilo, 2 stone heavier than me, and he's just flown up this hill, gone back around, and we had to do like 3 to 5 of them. But then after that one, he couldn't really be bothered, but he just had this like sort of explosive power and athleticness about him that he didn't look like he would have, but he was so powerful up that hill, and that's just it seems like it was wasted. But that's Dave's character, was that just love KFC sort of thing, and that's why everyone loved him. Like, he's the everyday man, you know what I mean? And but he's had a wild career, retired and boxed some huge names early on in his career. When he better managed, he wouldn't have probably taken those fights, but that's Dave.
And his athletic ability is, I think he said this on a few pods or whatever, but never with, but almost kind of with some regret, because he knows that it will just lead people to think, well, why haven't you just looked after yourself better? But he could run an 11-second 100 meters when he was a teenager. He could do 10 miles in an hour. And that doesn't make him like in a professional sport. There's loads of fighters who could do that.
When
the marriage of those two,
exactly. Yeah.
But the marriage of those two things, like that speed, but also that sort of endurance, it's just like,
I wish I had that athleticness. I've had to like train it into me from through the years, and I'm always so. Lee Cutler's another one, like unbelievable engine. I'm like, you bastard. just be better on your diet. And
do you think they'll do it again, Team Fisher? Would they do that again?
I mean,
I think he can learn
I don't
an
think
awful
Eddie will
lot.
do it again.
How can you not? Yeah, that's the thing. If
Johnny's
you're in
the ticket seller, he's kind of the only ticket seller, a big ticket seller they got. Is he at the? I can't
in the UK, yeah.
That's what I mean.
In the UK, yeah. I mean, the problem is if he doesn't fight him, then it's always going to linger over him, and that's going to be the flip side to it. And look, I don't profess to know everybody who's in the Romford Bull Army, but they seem like a pretty loyal bunch. So they're going to kind of be with him to a point, come what may. But people are going to want to see that rematch. It was a quite high profile, controversial win. I think Johnny Fisher has come out and said afterwards that he felt like he got the rub of the green. One thing I will say, I don't want to
that's a really, really honest way of describing it.
Yeah, he didn't get the rub of the green. It didn't go that way, and that's great. I'm not sure how lucid he's been in a lot of the things that he said. One thing, I don't want to dig anybody out, I didn't necessarily want to bring up, but I think there's a lot of footage flying around of a not well-looking Johnny Fisher after the fight. I think people should.
Oh, he's concussed.
Yeah, I mean, you know about this more so than anybody. Of course, yourself as a former fighter, current fighter. So I'm used to having Barry over here, wrong WBO champion. But yeah, there's a time and a place, I think, to stick a camera in somebody's face, and I'm not sure. I mean, Johnny Fisher was all intents and purposes out on his feet for a good couple of rounds, and pretty much for the last 3 or 4 rounds it's all muscle memory and balls really that keep you in there. I'm not sure that he needs, some of the footage that we've seen kind of circulating of him at the minute is really troubling and disturbing to watch. It's kind of it's the not nice side of boxing that really shouldn't always be seen. There's certain parts of the underbelly that we don't want to see. I'm sure you won't mind me saying it. After you boxed Zerdo Ramirez, did I shove a camera in your face?
No, you kindly waited in the hotel room till silly o'clock in the morning, just to make sure I was all right.
I'm already set up, Chris. Sit down here. So we're with the full body cast.
All you did was feed me pizza, make sure I was all right, and then
and
went to the airport.
And it's difficult. I certainly don't even know who's done whatever, but I've seen some bits floating around of Johnny Fisher, and it's not nice to see those things. And you would hope to see Johnny Fisher kind of go away now, get a good rest in, because that is a hard fight. And I felt like there were moments in that fight, and Dave Allen has said this after the fight, where you could really see the lack of experience. The turning of the back, he was turning away a lot. I know part of it towards the end, he was tired as well, kind of went into that faux shoulder roll. But there was, there was some
fight it out, wouldn't he, at times when he just shouldn't have been. Just hold him, walk it back, use the round to just get some recovery in.
Matt and Shane were half saying it. Well, they weren't half saying at one point. I think they thought there were 2 rounds left rather than 1. But
it was the end of the night. They were talking about
having a discussion about pulling him out, and I'd said, well, there's only 1 round left,
and
I don't see how they can do that now.
If there wasn't one more round, they probably would have pulled him, because I watched Sky.
It was a 12-rounder,
Yeah, because in that last round, but I say in that last round with 2 or 3 to go, and it looks as though he was pretty much gone at the end of the 9th round. I mean, I gave Johnny Fisher the 10th round. I think it was kind of what you've said, whether or not Dave Allen was kind of thought he had it in the bag, whether he was tired or what, but he just allowed Johnny Fisher, and fair play to Johnny Fisher for standing there and having it with him on the back of all of that.
And I think Dave will. I don't know. We'd have to ask him as to how tired he was himself, because he put a lot into that fight. He may well have been running on empty himself.
And it's been a long time since he's been in a fight like that in the 9th, 10th round of.
And I think he would quite legitimately say, "Look, all right. So what if I did lose that final round? I did more than enough in the rest of the fight, and I would accept that."
Yeah,
but
same.
I think if he does watch it back, and people don't always, he probably think, I could have made absolutely sure that didn't happen if I'd just done a bit more in the 10th.
Yeah, and it's good to see Dave Allen get a win. Well, not a win. Sorry. It's good to see Dave Allen put in a performance like that. I mean, the last time we saw him in a high-profile bout was against Fraser Clarke. By his own admission, we mentioned it. It was quite a really touching clip that he said to Sky Sports afterwards. He said, my granddad wouldn't speak to me after that, because he turned up and he kind of went through the motions, and there was a few low shots, and then the kind of fight ended on a bit of a damp squib. And Dave, as a proud man and a fighting man over the course of his career, wouldn't have been happy, to be pulled out of a fight as fighters are.
When he's been through those fights we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So for him to kind of do himself justice, where he hasn't in the past, he hasn't trained well. You mentioned that kind of masochistic era of him taking these. So you remember the fight he had with
Bracamonte.
Yeah, remember that?
He took it short notice.
Yeah, and he still wanted to box 3 weeks later. I remember there was a card in Sheffield 3 weeks later. I did an interview with him afterwards, and I remember saying, why do you feel that you need to box in 3 weeks? I remember him saying at the time, because if I don't box, I don't know what I'll do. And this, and there's at that time where he's kind of not training right and going into these difficult fights. But it looks as though, as time does for a lot of people, matures people and gives you a different perspective. He's now a father of 2. So he's not that same kind of, I guess, happy-go-lucky individual that he was years ago running around. But yeah, I mean, if it's not Johnny Fisher for him next, it will be a good name, you'd imagine. Somebody like a David Adelaide, maybe. That could be Fraser Clarke rematch. Who knows? There's differences, but you would imagine that it's got to be the Johnny Fisher rematch at some point. If not next, I mean, if you're in the Johnny Fisher, we mentioned there about Eddie Hearn, you want to see him probably, I don't know, come back in against somebody and get a confidence builder under his belt before then. But I don't see how you can't take the rematch if you're Johnny Fisher. At some point, it's got to happen.
If you do have a fight in between, you almost use that fight as part of the camp.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And get almost like, don't treat it like a spar, treat it like a fight. But the beauty of you're not making weight, you don't have to do all that sort of stuff as a heavyweight. But you just stick it in 8 weeks before the fight, and it's like a Joshua and Ngannou job, do you know what I mean? And build your confidence, but with the right thing, that you're going into another hard fight, you're back in camp on Tuesday or Wednesday. If you're going to have an easy touch and a knockover job as such, but it's hard to do that with an inexperienced guy, because things can happen and you could pick up an injury or something like that as well. But I think that'd probably be the best thing from their camp. The best thing in boxing terms, and what should happen is they should have an immediate rematch, and Johnny has to get his head screwed on and make some adjustments.
Maybe Konstantin Dovbychenko, somebody like that, similar sort of stature, similar sort of build to a Dave Allen. Come forward, keep it tight. Yeah, because that's what Dave Allen did. He kept it nice and tight. He old manned him, didn't he?
Yeah, and
let him shoot his big shots early on, wait for him to slow down. That left hook that he caught him, if he caught him with a left hook, I think in the second round, that got a reaction. Yeah. And just where Johnny has that sort of the low lead hammer, he fires the jab up, but the hand is here rather than here where it needs to be. On the inside, his hand's down here, and the left hook just comes over and takes him out, and that's it.
And I think
a lot of little technical flaws.
If they take one in between, then you'd imagine it's going to be one of those situations where the Tibbs, they say to him, like, this is what we want you to do, and you must do it.
Yeah.
Like, just keep it longer, more economical, win around 10-9. Like, you don't need to win massive 10-9s.
And with if he boxed loose and didn't try, with someone like that, what is the inexperience is trying to punch someone who's durable and hard off you, and so you try harder to punch him harder. But if he went out and boxed someone and just went boom, boom, he'd throw a 1-2 quick, loose, and it would end up knocking someone out. Do you know what I mean? But where he's going, like Dave's just like could just ride those shots.
The more he tried to take Dave Allen out, the more Dave liked it.
And that's what Dave likes. That's what Dave's good at. He's good at riding shots and just, you know, he still gets hit, but he's durable, so he can take the risk of sort of riding shots against someone who's shows their attacks. Do you know what I mean? Like Johnny does.
Okay, right, moving on. We're going to try and whiz through these last few fights. Andy, going to come to you first for Ishmael Davis's latest last-minute expedition. This one several levels above the last one against Serhij Bohachuk. Shot to nothing for Ishmael Davis, stepping in as a late replacement. Very, very tough fight on paper, and as it transpired on the night with Serhij Bohachuk winning by a 6th round corner stoppage. Fair play to Ishmael Davis, gave it a go, but found wanting on the night against a legitimately world-class fighter in Serhij Bohachuk.
Yeah, as it turned out, he was a bit too far in over his head, and with those kinds of scenarios, whether your fighter walks away with a worthwhile experience they can build from, or whether they walk away with it being a damaging experience, really can come down to the corner. And because of the corner, I think he can walk away from it with his head held high, feeling like he learnt plenty. He knows what it's like at that level now. He responded to some adversity, having got knocked down. He didn't fold immediately after that. He kind of dug in and came back a bit. And then right at the end of that 6th round, he got hit with 7 or 8 good, real hard digs in the final minute. Went back to the corner, little shake of the head, and they pulled him out, which was exactly the right thing to do, because if they're going to sit him down and start shouting at him about, you know, how much do you want this and blah blah blah, and sent him back out for 2 more rounds, that could be really damaging. But they didn't, and if they're watching this, you know, his Keith Walton's his trainer, they'd probably be slightly miffed that I'd suggest that they wouldn't, because that's what a good corner does, and they obviously know what they're doing. But people don't always do it.
No,
I saw a fight 2 weeks ago in Dubai, Arlen Lopez up against a guy called Nagita Jean, who'd come in at short notice. He was a little bit lazy, Lopez, but he was winning the fight, and with a round to go, I thought he'd won the fight. Jean got put down heavy, at which point the corner should have stopped it, and they didn't. He got put down heavy again, at which point the corner really should have stopped it, and they didn't, at which point the referee probably should have stopped it. And he wandered back out into the middle of the ring, completely defenceless, really, and got flattened. Luckily, as he was kind of on his way back, and it was horrendous. You know, it was just awful corner work. So people do it. So when a corner gets it right, they do deserve some credit for it, and they got it absolutely right.
Yeah, I thought it was a very well-timed stoppage in the corner. Ishmael Davis, you know, mentioned the Josh Kelly fight was a step up at short notice. This had a little bit longer to prepare for, in my opinion, a much better fighter in Serhij Bohachuk. A move back down to domestic level seems to be next for Ishmael Davis. Kind of came out and, you know, said, I think he got very well paid for both fights. It's worth pointing that out, and certainly you don't begrudge somebody going to get those paydays while they're there. But yeah, moving back down to domestic level, obviously had that really good win over Troy Williamson. Looks to be next for Ishmael Davis.
Yeah, I mean, he started, the first round was great.
Really good.
Really good first round.
Bohachuk kind of looked at him like, what's this?
Yeah, absolutely massive super welterweight as well. His like shoulders and like taper out from his waist. He's big.
He's a big unit of the weight, and he it's that experience will do him well, but you got to use it. You can't be this guy who's just constantly jumping in at last minute, and unless it's a year down the line, you've had a few domestic wins, built up your record again, and you think this one's worth it, and I've got 4 weeks to train for it. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to he needs to be well managed now, and I'm not saying he hasn't been. I'm just saying that, I believe that if I was in his business, then that would have been the right thing to do. But you can't just keep doing that unless, you know, you're in it for the money and nothing else. But yeah, I think back down to domestic level / European level, you know, sort of that sort of British Commonwealth European level would be good for him. Showed that he's capable in both stances as well, and can do everything, can punch a bit, can box a bit and move, and but yeah, I was impressed with Bohachuk. Looked like he is a decent fighter. We know that, but pretty relentless. Bit of Kisniak about him. Or probably the other way around, maybe. But yeah, exciting to watch. But yeah, I think for Ishmael Davis, just needs to focus on his own career rather than doing other people favours now.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk, as there has been, about Ishmael Davis against Junaid Bostan, kind of all Yorkshire rivalry, Leeds against Rotherham. That seems like a much more suitable big fight for Ishmael Davis going into 2025.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that's been scheduled for a bit. I mean, that's been supposed to happen a couple of times. I think it was just about to happen, and then he either took the Wembley fight or he took this fight. But it's been floating around for a long time. I mean, I'd love to see that. Whether they might now both feel like that could wait a bit, I'm not sure. But he's absolutely right. What you don't want is to get cast in that role of the guy who comes in and gives it a good crack but doesn't win. Anyone who starts being measured too much off their defeats, it's not a good place to be. He had that big win against Troy Williamson. He's done this twice now. Credit to him for doing it. He'll have learnt plenty.
Yep.
But as Chris says, now it's about what do you want to achieve, and I'm sure he wants to win titles. And you look at Super Welter, Sam Gillies rematching Louis Green. They were supposed to, and then Louis was injured. It's a division where there are fights for him. There are fights for him, and he should have made good money. So if that was a problem, then it just takes the pressure off. If there was pressure on in that regard, and there may or may not have been, but now he could afford to kind of not box for free, obviously, but he can afford to try and build his own career off the back of assuming they were good paydays.
Yeah,
I was end up like almost like a Gabe Rosado sort of, always boxing. I know he had a few good wins and stuff, but always kind of just boxing that gatekeeper type thing.
Yeah, you don't want to get cast in that, and
especially as he's
end up as
so
an
much
opponent
ability.
for Madrimov middle of next year when Madrimov needs an opponent or something like that. You don't really want to be kind of cast into that role. But yeah, lots of good fights. 154 pounds. I really like that Bostan versus Davis fight. I think that's a fight that could actually make a bit of noise over here. Could be a
definitely.
good little fight. Please have it in Yorkshire, Mr. Excellency. But we'll see what happens
headline
with
the
that.
show with that.
You would hope so. Yeah. But you could have headlined the show with fucking Johnny Fisher and Dave Allen. Could you not?
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
But we'll see. But anyway, you could do the rematch. But anyway, lots to look forward to for Ishmael Davis in 2025, as there is for Peter McGrail, who had a very good fight at the weekend with Reece Edwards. Of course, we were expecting to see him against Dennis McCann, but Dennis McCann had other ideas. Shout out Varda. We wait to see what happens with his pre-fight adverse analytical finding. But a good performance, I felt, at times from Peter McGrail. But he does like to get dragged in, doesn't he, Chris? He's a sucker for a thriller, and we're all for it, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, a great fight, really good fight. Like, I watched that again and again because it was highly skilled. Edwards was good. He just we're coming back to it again, but probably a lack of consistency. Like, McGrail's always, because he's got such a good amateur background, he's always in shape, a little bit like Usyk is to punch, whereas Edwards now again would walk off and sort of maybe get caught and stuff, but Edwards' straight right hand was a great shot. Caught him with it loads throughout the fight. And then, but McGrail was just able to have more variety in terms of, like, he changed the tempo a lot better. Whereas Edwards everything was committed to every shot, even the jab, which he timed really, really well at times over the top of McGrail's jab, or when he was coming in, he timed the right hand and the jab really well. McGrail was just now and again able to just go bum bum and load up a couple to body, but then he'd just like have that little 1-2 hook, little spin off, which was just heavy enough but just to keep him honest, and was always throwing a few more punches per combination and throwing more, being busy. But a really, really good fight, and Edwards, fair play to him to put up a fight like that on such short notice. I know he was in training for January 11th, but both exciting fighters, and a good fight.
We're an interesting sort of situation with Peter McGrail, aren't we now? Like, particularly on the back of that, we don't know what's going to happen with Dennis McCann, but let's just say he's probably not going to be boxing for the next, 3 to 6 months, depending on when Peter McGrail wants to return to the ring, regardless of what happens with Dennis McCann. I'm sure it will take a little bit of time for the dust to settle. where do we go now with Peter McGrail? Obviously, he had that bump in the road. It was a significant bump in the road against Jericho O'Quinn. That rematch never really happened. Does he look to revisit that now? I mean, kind of, there's Liam Davies domestically, Shabazz Massoud, like those types of guys kind of floating around. Obviously, Shabazz Massoud slightly further ahead now. Where do we look at for Peter McGrail now?
I think you move on from the O'Quinn rematch because he wanted that and it was going to happen and then it didn't. And the fact that he wanted it, for me, that's kind of enough. It was a bizarre one, that, because he was cruising that fight and looking like he was going to close in for the finish himself. I mean, he was closing in for the finish and then just walked onto a short right hand and got knocked out cold. It happens, you know. But those ones can be hard to get over earlier in a fighter's career because they haven't really done a lot to really fall back on and give them confidence. But then he's done loads as an amateur. And I know it's different. It is still very different. But I think he's probably been able to recover from that mentally much better than you would have done at, say, 8-0 or whatever it was if you hadn't done everything he'd done as an amateur. He's just got to be looking upwards, hasn't he, basically? He'll have been gutted that fight fell through because it was the absolutely perfect thing for him and he would have been completely confident he was going to win, as would McCann. He's great to watch. And he started nice and quick and Edwards was kind of having a look and he won the first couple and then he was pretty even after that. Does he need to tighten up a bit defensively because he can tend to hold his hands quite low or get caught after he's punched? I thought that was something that happened.
He leaps in a lot with his attacks
quite
as well,
a bit.
which is
and with a low lead hand, so like the jab over the top was easy for Edwards to land and the straight right hand.
Yeah, it's interesting to see where he goes because
McCann's got the British, Commonwealth and European, isn't he? That's what that fight was supposed to be for. So
what happens there while all of this stuff is being sorted out? These things are not quick, regardless of which way they go.
No.
So it's going to be interesting to see where they go with him. I suppose obviously now the cut is going to take a little bit of time anyway, so he's going to be out. He's not going to be sparring for a little while, which is again not ideal when you're looking to get on with things and you've had a couple of fights in. Okay, the O'Quinn rematch isn't quite a big fight, but for his career it's a big fight. And the Dennis McCann fight was obviously the opportunity for him to pick up that major hardware, and
that would have put everything. Exactly,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he would have picked up a world ranking on the back of that, becoming the European champion. So yeah, it's interesting to see where he goes from here. I think Reece Edwards emerges with massive credit, even in defeat. Wasn't at his best when he boxed Brad Foster. I thought he got away with one that night, Reece Edwards, but I thought he really rose to the occasion at the weekend. I think there's a lot to come for him next year.
And I think he was him and the team. I think they just managed the whole situation really well because he took it late. They took their time getting there during the week. They didn't kind of like rush over for the press engagements. They got there in their own time. From what I heard, they'd have been okay with it being at featherweight. In the end, it was at super featherweight because he has been in the gym. I think he thought he might be fighting in November and then maybe December. It turned out to be January. So he's been on it, which can take it out of you. But it was interesting listening to the corner because they knew he was in it. He was picking his punches well. He wasn't throwing as many as McGrail, but he was picking them well, and he was in it. And then Gary Lockett towards the end was saying, "Listen, you really are in this now. You're really in this. We can win this fight." But then they were telling him, weren't they? Which was interesting. First minute and a half, just almost kind of like just let him do whatever he's going to do, and then the second 90 seconds, get on him. And that's maybe what you tell someone if they weren't expected to be fighting 10 rounds on that particular date because you don't want to blow a gasket. And yeah, I just thought, obviously it could have gone better, he could have won, but I just thought really it couldn't have gone much better for him because that was a high level contest. They both looked really good and I really, really enjoyed it. And who cares that he's lost? I mean, it just doesn't, on that kind of stage when you put on a performance like that, it just doesn't matter. Yeah,
I mean, it's arguably more valuable to his career than going and getting a win over somebody nobody's ever heard of on a show that not as many people are going to be watching in January. Okay, the final fight we are going to discuss from this past weekend. Andy, going to come to you first for a win for Lee McGregor. a unanimous decision victory over Isaac Lowe, a wide winner, certainly very wide on my scorecard. Judges had it a little bit closer at 91-97 and 96-92. There's a few points deducted here and there. Felt like Isaac Lowe celebrated every round that he won by getting a point deducted just to even it up, which was very good of him. But a good performance from Lee McGregor, somebody who, you know, came through with a lot of fanfare and achieved an awful lot at a very young age in the sport, but it's kind of stagnated over recent years. Been waiting for a big opportunity. He got one and he took it with both hands. A decent performance from Lee McGregor, but a lot in there to like about his performance as well. Yeah,
it was a really good fight to watch, and I thought he really produced the goods because he needed to. This is the opportunity for him now to really springboard into a second phase of his career, because British, Commonwealth and European champion at bantamweight, I mean, that's nothing to be sniffed at. And I always thought he looked absolutely massive at bantamweight. I couldn't quite understand how he made the weight, but watching him, huge. Watching him on Saturday, I'd seen him from ringside before. I saw him in the Falls Park, but this time he's got such natural tools. He's got really long arms, or at least he looks like he has. Because if you see him square on, whenever I saw him square on, when he throw that jab from the waist, it seemed to travel an impossibly long way. And that uppercut on the inside, the leverage you would get off that with the kind of long lever. He's a really good fighter, and he was a really good amateur. And in the end, he was just better than Isaac Lowe, and it was as simple as that. And there was always a chance that he would be, because you look at the pedigree that he's got. Isaac's career, I do think, is a bit underrated, because a couple of draws, if they'd gone the other way, then he would have won British and European titles. And as we know, he's only lost to Lopez and Nick Ball, who both went on to win world titles. But it was a great scrap, and Isaac Lowe, you could see the frustration coming off him towards the end, because he just couldn't quite make it happen. But it wasn't for lack of trying. Yeah, and sort of as the rounds ticked on, McGregor, I think it was 6 and 7, started to walk him onto some lovely uppercuts and really sort of found that flow. I felt like McGregor was always ahead in the early rounds of the fight, but as it went on, and maybe that's, you know, not boxing at a decent level with respect to the opponents that he's had in the last couple of fights, and that consistent, there it is again, he hasn't had that consistent activity as the fight played on. That was impressive, because Isaac Lowe did 10 rounds earlier in the year, and I think he felt like, all right, you know, you're looking quite long and loose, and not flash, but long and loose, and yeah, hooray for you in the first half of the fight, but you wait, mate, second half you'll slow down, and then I'll be all over you like a rash. And he absolutely tried to do that, but he still had enough in the tank, McGregor, to be able to handle it. And when you are that kind of like loose and relaxed, it's the best way of conserving energy, I'm told. Chris, obviously you spent quite a lot of time around Lee at the start of his career. Was trained by Shane McGuigan, your trainer. Always been a very talented boy. I mentioned earlier on, it's not really fallen as he would have wanted it to in recent years. Kind of go back to that, really, we were talking about it before we came on, weren't we, where he had that kind of Cash Farouk fight, and then obviously picked up the European against Karim Gurfi after that, but really since then has struggled for that marquee win. But somebody who I'm sure that you'll remember from your days around him in the early stages of his professional career, always had bags of ability and bags of talent, Lee.
Yeah, he everything you know Andy's talking about there, that, you know, good jab, good right uppercut, like always had that really good left hook as well, which I remember being one of his best punches. But that right uppercut as well, and big for the weight when he was at Bantam especially. But things happen. He turned pro young, and I think he had a child early on in his career. All those things can sort of change how you look at the world and how your life is, and especially when you get so much success early on, I often think it's such a curse. Like for me, it's different because there was no hype, and I was older. I turned pro at 27, and that's been a massive blessing for me. But I think with the hype around Lee, he beat Thomas Asumba in his 5th fight for the Commonwealth. Like, I stopped him in the 12th round. Like, if you go and look at what Asumba's done since then, but even before then, like, he was a very durable guy, but especially since then. But really, really good win, absolute wild fight in York Hall. I remember I was on after it, so I was like getting my hands wrapped by Josh Pritchard that night because Shane had everyone on, and it was just, you could just hear it just go, oh, like there's a eruption of noise in there. All the Scots had come down. Really talented fighter, Lee, and hopefully now he can sort of push on from that win.
He's not a baby anymore, Andy. 27 years old. Must make you feel really old. Every time I speak to Lee, I'm always like, how old are you now? I'm 27. I'm like, fuck, I'm old as well. But yeah, an interesting position for him now. Picks up a WBC intergalactic title.
I'm pretty sorry. I'll just remember now. Talking about his age, I'm pretty sure it's his birthday tomorrow. I remember his birthday being Christmas Eve. I'm very weird with dates, as you know.
Let's have a look.
I'm pretty sure his birthday's Christmas Eve.
It is Christmas Eve. Well done.
Yeah.
So happy birthday for tomorrow, Lee. I'm sure you'll have a very, very nice Christmas on the back of that win. But yes, and for his birthday, he's picked up a nice WBC.
So he'll be 28.
20. Wow, Jesus Christ. Yeah, we do really feel old. But yeah, picks up a ranking belt with the WBC. So he's going to be kind of in line for a meaningful fight next. Where would you like to see him go? A fight that I kind of quite like the look of, if he's going to stay at featherweight, an all Scottish tussle with Nathaniel Collins, I quite like.
Yeah.
That could be sort of around that sort of level. It's kind of European-ish sort of, I don't know what I'm doing with my hands, European-ish level. That's
the
big
ideal
opportunity for him, isn't it?
That's the ideal thing for him, because this is kind of like, this is it now.
Got to make the most of this now.
This is it now. And I know that fight had been floating around for a while, and Isaac obviously boxes on Tyson's undercards, but the fact that it happened on the card it happened on is just the perfect springboard, because somewhere else and it just wouldn't have attracted as much attention. And he has been drifting, since that defeat against Robles Ayala. He's been drifting, and he's had a few issues outside of the ring, and this was what he needed. It's all about opportunities, and he got exactly the right opportunity, and he's taken it, and now he's got to build on it. And I think the perfect next thing would be that kind of fight against Collins at that kind of level. All right, he's already won a British and Commonwealth and European title at a lower weight, but that doesn't mean that you're now above it at the weight above. Just get that done. He would be confident of winning that fight, but it's a big fight. As you say, it would attract some attention, be a good spotlight on it. So that seems to me to be the ideal next thing for him.
Couple of Scots, couple of Aggie Scots coming to a Riyadh season undercard in Riyadh. But yeah, we'd love to see that fight at some point in 2025. Just a quick last few little bits and pieces on the undercard. Daniel Lapin, a 10-round winner over Dylan Collin, which is the least French name I've ever heard in my life. Andrew Nowitzki with a 10-round win over the very Mexican-sounding Edgar Ramirez. And Mohamed Alakel with a 6-round win over Joshua Ocampo. That about rounds us off, guys. We are there. It's
good performance, I thought, from Adam Hamed midweek.
Adam Hamed on the midweek card, on the workout card. They've not been to one of those.
Yeah, I mean, they did
like
it.
I went to the Crawford one because I was in the States.
Yeah, they did it in LA, didn't they?
Santa Monica Pier. Weird. I was at Santa Monica Pier like a week before.
We always say that we're going to change the format of fight weeks.
Yeah, they did them in Wembley as well. They did them on after the workout, so we were there quite late, and it was unexpectedly sort of quite a lot colder than I remember it being this time last year. People were asking me the week before in Liverpool, like, Andy Scott, do I need a jacket? And I was just like mocking him, saying, Andy, no, you don't need a jacket. He absolutely did need a jacket. But it's an interesting idea. We saw a Saudi fighter, or a Syrian fighter actually, who's come through the Mike Tyson gym, Abdullah Darkazanli on pro debut, Bobby Rimmer and Brian Rose, Billy Nelson in his corner. He looked good. He came through this trial system that Joe Gallagher set up when 1,000 fighters came through and he picked 30. He looked good. He really boxed well. And Adam Hamed was in with someone he was supposed to beat, but he was nice and tight and nice and compact and well organised and all that kind of stuff. Chris Congo was on it. Luke Bibby was on it. I'm missing someone out, so apologies to whoever that is. But, yeah, maybe didn't need 5 fights, maybe 3. And maybe a couple more Saudi fighters.
A couple more at the presser.
Yeah, would have just. I think going forward with that, they'll look to populate it with more Saudi fighters. But you can't do it until they're ready, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Right, before we let things go, it is the final day of work, for me anyway, the final day of work. Yes, in a way, it's boxing in January, so I have to work tomorrow, which is great. I'm only joking, I'm devastated. But yes, before we let you go, Okay, so Christmas wish. What are you asking for Christmas this year, Andy? What is your Christmas wish for 2024?
In the boxing world,
You can have whatever you want.
I can have whatever I want. Blimey.
This fat bearded Santa is going to deliver everything for you.
Well,
mate.
that's good to know. That's good to know.
What do you get a man that's got everything?
I don't know. I don't tend to look. I don't tend to look too far ahead. I tend to just kind of see what happens and just roll with it. Just go with the flow. I'm really enjoying doing what I'm doing these days. And as you get older, I wouldn't say I'm ever adverse to change, because I'm in the wrong business for that, because these are chaotic shifting sands. But I'm used to it. But I'm really enjoying doing what I'm doing. And so a period of relative stability, I think, would be nice. But having said that, I think what we all thrive off in this game is just the endless speculation about what comes next. On the broadcast side, it's interesting times, because Queensberry are going to DAZN from the start of April, which I didn't necessarily see coming. Top Rank have got to deal with ESPN, which, from what we hear, may not get renewed midway through next year, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens with them. Sky have got a situation on their hands as well. I have no inside information as to what's going to happen there, but there's things brewing, and it's certainly not going to be dull. But so long as I can just stay in this and keep going to fights and keep getting the opportunity to chat shit with people like yourself, then I'll be happy.
There we go. Chris, what's Santa bringing you this year?
Good question. No, I'm excited for my next stage, the CBS 2.0, if you want to call it that. I'd love Lee McGregor, because we've been talking about Lee Cutler, to get a fight in Bournemouth. Be weird if Lee McGregor headlined in Bournemouth.
It's a long trip from Edinburgh, man.
The other side of the UK. No, I'd love Lee Cutler to get a headline at the BIC. He's been through a tough year, but performed so well, and I'm still buzzing from that weekend. It meant a lot to me. He's been training with him for 15 years, you know what I mean? And now he's training, obviously, with us up the gym. And him and Josh both really deserve that win. And it's amazing, great little relationship they've got. So I'd love to see him headline at the BIC, because it'd mean a lot to Josh as well. Because Josh, although he's been in massive fights, he hasn't been the head trainer, you know. And when Shane goes down to the BIC, he's like, this isn't the MGM. This isn't, you know, stadium fights isn't this or whatever. And so I'll be really buzzing for Lee to get that, and Bournemouth get behind him. And then, the Cherries keep doing what they're doing. Shout out up the Cherries. They're doing well. A nice little win against Palace on Boxing Day. Yeah, we used to beat in Palace in all aspects of different sports. I'm going to that on Boxing Day. And
that's what you're talking about, mate. You haven't boxed the Crystal Palace fan. Sorry.
I'm going to use it now. Winning at home.
You boxed the Crystal Palace, man.
I'm going out Boxing Day, so I'm looking forward to that.
Good stuff. Didn't even ask for a present for himself. What do I want for Christmas this year?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't prepared to be asked any questions. I usually ask the questions. It's a good question. I don't know. We've had a big year of change at Boxing News. Boxing News still out for another couple of weeks. We made sure that most of the stuff in there you can still read after the fight as well. So don't just see the front cover of it and just get put off by it.
Violent Night. Someone always has to do.
It's got to be like Violent Night, the fight before Christmas,
seasons beatings,
yeah, all of that stuff. It all happens. It's like you eavesdropped on our covers call.
It's just the best thing. I was going on about it during the week. It's just, you know, I love it.
Yeah, you've got to get that in there.
Jingle Hells.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one as well. But yeah, we had a lot going on this year. We launched a new website, which has just gone live in the last week. We launched a new app. All the boring stuff, like completely changed all of our distribution on the magazine and stuff like that. All been very time consuming and very kind of stressful, to be honest with you. You know, we've had a busy old year of change at Boxing News, the world's oldest and independent fight magazine. So next year, I think we're just looking for a bit of stability, nice serene period of time, which you never get in boxing. But I'm gonna wish for it anyway.
Is this the last show before the new year? So what sort of, surely we've got to have a fight we both want to see in 2025.
We can have a fight. We both we're gonna do that this time, but we're gonna do it. But we can do that. We can do that around better. But what I would really like is so we had a very busy and lots of things have happened this year. It's been a very, very, very busy year. I just want like a nice week. I've got 4-month-old son. When was my son born?
Big up, 2nd of August.
2nd of August. He knows that it's actually the same birthday as
I would
CBS.
probably know it anyway.
Yeah,
as we found out.
So yeah, I'd like to spend a little bit of time with my son. I'm going to Las Vegas, which everybody knows is the spiritual home of me, at the end of January to go to see David Benavidez and David Morrell, which I'm really excited about.
Is that on the 25th?
That's on the 1st.
Oh, it's on the 1st.
It's just the week after.
So same night. Yeah,
same
Adam
night
Azim.
Oh, the same night as Adam Azim, yeah.
And hopefully Lee Cutler.
There's something on the 25th. Anyway.
That's Ellie Scott.
There we go. Yeah, I knew it was somebody in your stable. So, yeah, looking for some nice downtime after a very busy year with Boxing News. But, yeah, that's it. Spend a bit of time with my newborn son and my daughter. And not that she watches this, but my missus might just find this bit and show her, and she'll...
Surely your daughter will watch it if she knows I'm on it.
She might well do. Yeah, she's my daughter's a CBS super fan. She had the back of she had the Boxing News magazine, which was the cherry on top, which was the one after you beat Lawrence Okoli. She was reading that in the back of the car for about 6 months. She's not the brightest, but yeah, she's a big CBS super fan. But yes, we're looking for a nice, happy Christmas, a Merry Christmas to all of you sitting at home and watching this, or wherever you are. You might be out and about watching this. Thank you very much for all of your support over the year. Thank you to the Welsh Wizard, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, Mr. Barry Jones, and of course to his able deputy in Chris Billam-Smith, and to the ever here, because he got nothing better to do, Andy Clarke,
That's exactly right.
who managed to fly back from Riyadh and still get here before both myself and Chris Billam-Smith.
I could have quite legitimately said, listen, Rob, I've been away for about 11 days. I can't really make it today. But no, I actually used it as an excuse to get out of the house earlier than I really needed to. My wife doesn't watch this, so it's fine. Yeah.
I was saying, like, the first wives clubs, we're just like, everyone has, like, we've all got partners who they're widows to the sport, aren't they? And this is just our way of just getting away from it as well, and just kind of keeping everything. Yeah.
Actually, my daughter shares a birthday with Anthony Joshua.
Oh, does she?
15th of October.
That's good. My son shares a birthday with Chris Billam-Smith. So yeah, not quite as impressive. Sorry, but still, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah. No.
Right. Okay.
He can be a judge of that.
Yeah.
We'll get Lara to tell him. Ask her how good it is.
But okay, that's all we have time for. On a serious note, thank you everybody. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in every Monday-ish this year and has been patient with us when we've not been around, and of course to everybody who is still buying and subscribing to Boxing News. Big up Boxing News. Thank you very much to Chris Billam-Smith, to Andy Clarke, to Danny G behind pressing all of the buttons and making us all look pretty. Thanks very much for stopping by. Wish you a Merry, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you in January.